Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. It is July 23rd, 2017. I'm your host, Enzo Quesada, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Bobby Hester.
Hello, everyone.
Hope y'all are having a good week this week. Before we get into the show, we just have a couple things we need to mention. We are now adding timestamps to the description on the podcast, so if you want to jump ahead to something that seems interesting or whatever it may be, you have the timestamp now. We still have the PayPal, which will also be in the description along with the email address. The PayPal for us is paypal.me/TrumpRepublicRadio, and our email is TrumpRepublicRadio@gmail.com. Another thing I want to mention before we get into the show is this week for the midweek mini podcast, we're looking to do it over the Russian conspiracy from the very beginning to where we are now, which is going to be a lot of work, but hopefully you enjoy that show because it's, pretty much the most pertinent thing that should not matter at all in the world right now. So, anything else before we go in?
No, let's get straight into it. Let's go.
Okay, the first thing that we wanted to talk about this week was the Obamacare repeal bill dying in the Senate. Now, how many votes were they down when this thing happened?
Well, they were having trouble getting all, because, the Republicans only have 52 votes in the Senate, and they were having trouble getting to that number. They only needed 51 to pass it.
Yeah.
Or, 50, I guess, if you include Mike Pence would be the
I believe they only got like 47
votes.
votes.
Yeah, they only had like 47 or 48, so they just came a couple of votes short of where they needed to be.
So that bill is dead, and this is definitely not a good moment in the Trump administration. Another legislative failure, and we've been pushing this healthcare stuff since, March now?
Oh, yeah, we've been pushing it since day one, and what makes me the most angry about it is, the House passed like 30-something repeal Obamacare bills when Obama was president, and the Senate didn't, But now that, it's like it's game time, you've got the votes, do it, So,
yeah,
it just upsets me.
So, I don't know, this doesn't look good for heading into tax reform after not getting anything out of this healthcare bill. That's my one big thing. I don't think they have their mindset with the Republican Party leadership to do what they need to do with tax reform.
No, they absolutely don't.
Because I know most people like Donald Trump's plan, but I don't think Paul Ryan does.
Paul Ryan does not. No,
plan.
He wants to make major changes to it, and I guess I would say that I'm slightly more confident that they'll at least get something done tax form wise, but
which is what the entire stock market right now is banking on.
If they were to come out and just say we're not going to get taxed at all, the entire market would just go down by a lot very fast. But even so, the market does think that Congress will at least get something done, even if you're not going to get everything from his tax package done. At least get some major things to it. At least lower taxes by a very, very large amount. That would be sufficient for me, at least initially right now, seeing as we're only 6 months into his presidency. But
we have nothing as far as a Congress, and I mean we control the House and the Senate. This is unexcusable. You guys are put into office to do the job for us.
Exactly. And if you think about it, the fact that you have the majority in both houses, you shouldn't need to do anything in terms of making concessions to Democrats. You should be treating the Democrats like they're irrelevant right now. You don't need their votes. They are. Politically, they are. And yet it seems like everything you do is just continuing to let them get what they want.
So now it's interesting where we move on from here, because I've seen both the wording of will repeal and replace later, and also we will let the system collapse and we'll come back to the Democrats and make them come do a deal with us. They both don't really sound very appetizing at the moment.
They don't. However,
just a repeal would be fine for most people. But
I think if they did do a simple repeal, even the current repeal that the Senate was talking about, there's a grandfathered in clause where, if people did have any insurance plans through the Obamacare marketplace, they would still be on it, or something like that. Which
Yeah.
you're going to have to do that if you're going to repeal it.
Oh, that's a given. That
it's
would
about
be
repealing
something
most of the regulations and stuff that goes along with it, more than quote unquote taking people's health care away. I would have to say though that the other option there, which is just let the thing die. This is going to sound really weird, but I think that might actually be the better option at this point, because as it stands right now, the Republican Party does not look very well or look good at all for the fact that they were unable to act on this.
Yeah.
However, the Democrats still own it. They passed Obamacare, didn't have a single Republican vote, and the closer you get to the 2018 midterms, I mean, we talk every week about states like Iowa is going down to 1 or even 0 insurers in their state. So the closer you get, especially senators that are in vulnerable seats, their constituents are not happy with them, and they're going to have to be forced to act. I mean, the House did pass this thing. We're worried about the Senate now, and so at least in terms of the Senate, I think that the closer you get to the 2018 midterms and the worse things get, the more likely they will be to act. But that being said, you still have to do it the right way, because if you screw it up, you're done. That's it. You're out.
Now, I do agree with you that the Democrats own this, and the entire system's collapsing because they made this stupid bill all those years ago. But the Republicans now trying twice to repeal it, I think that really takes away a lot of the edge that the Democrats really have to dread about we passed this bill.
It does.
Because the Republicans were trying something to do anything. Now, if we come back to the drawing board to make a healthcare bill down the line, maybe sometime next year, and we have to, reach across the aisle for some Democrats, I don't know what kind of deal we're going to get with that, because, any sort of concession to the Democrats is going to mean more socialized health care in some sort of fashion. Maybe expand of Medicare or Medicaid and a repeal on top of that. I don't know. There's a lot of things you could do, but
even if I know this is never going to happen, but even if Congress was just to listen to our episode where we talked about healthcare in one of our midweek mini podcasts that we did, even if you just did a couple of simple things like open it up to state lines where people can buy insurance from other states.
Yeah, that's
simple
the absurd
stuff like
thing.
that. Even if we
still don't have that.
Yeah, even if you didn't repeal all of it, if you could repeal portions of it, and instead of replacing the entire thing, do little tiny baby steps here and there. Start with something like that, and then say, okay, we're going to do this right now, and then later on down the line we'll hit it later. You do little things like that, and it will start to get better. But even then, they're not even willing or able, it seems, to do that either, which, like I said, that makes me most mad.
Now, Donald Trump held a meeting with all of the GOP senators, I believe it was.
Yeah, it wasn't even a meeting, it was like a luncheon. He called all of them to the White House, and I saw the pictures of it. They had huge table in a square shape set up in one of the ballrooms there at the White House, and everyone was having, it was either lunch or dinner there, and Trump was just scolding them the entire time.
Oh, he was super furious.
Yeah.
And he had that huge tirade on Twitter right after this stuff happened as well. He seems extremely pissed off with how this result went. And he was saying to them, hey, you guys need to put a bill on my desk before you're allowed to go for any sort of recess. He said to cancel their recess.
Yeah, he did, and a lot of good that did for them. I don't think it's gonna end up changing anything, even if they do cancel.
But here's the thing: these guys could put any bill on Donald Trump's desk, and he will sign it.
Yeah,
this is 100% on them. Okay. Yes, this looks bad for Donald Trump. Yes, I think you could have approached this stuff way differently. And yes, I don't even think healthcare is where we should have started. But Donald Trump's going to take the hit on this regardless. So,
and the last thing I wanted to say, the Republican Party in Congress, even though there's it seems like there is a lot of infighting between different sections of the Republican Party, but you'd think that in something as important as repealing and replacing Obamacare, they would at least be able to come together to do something. And they couldn't even get all their votes. And a lot of it, I hate to say it, a lot of it was from more the Freedom Caucus-y type senators that are there who are holding out their votes. And those were the ones that you'd think would be the happiest about repealing and replacing Obamacare. But even then, they couldn't jump on the plan. So the Senate really needs to come together, and they just need to do something, and quickly.
Yeah. Let's go into the next thing that we have here, though. Sean Spicer, now the former press secretary, he resigned this week. Do you remember what day of the week it was?
Oh, this was on Thursday. No, this was on Friday.
Friday?
Yes, this was on Friday.
Now, he's been replaced by Sarah Huckabee Sanders. She's been generally better than what I've seen with Sean Spicer.
Oh, I absolutely love her in comparison to Sean Spicer.
It's not that I hated Sean Spicer so much, but I do not think that he was representing the president very well.
No, he wasn't. And when he would get up there on the podium, he would make himself look bad. He would make the president look bad. Even though, a lot of times he would be right in some of the things he was saying. He did not articulate things very well, in my opinion. But whereas Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she's been serving as deputy press secretary, and she's on fire. Like, every time she gets up there, she just hammers reporters. She gets the message across. She doesn't stutter, or make herself look bad. And so when I heard that he resigned, I figured she would probably be promoted to that spot, and she ended up doing that. And that made me very happy, because I think she is a lot better, and she serves the Trump team in a much higher capacity than Sean Spicer ever could.
I think when we look back on Sean Spicer and his short time in the White House,
6 months and 1 day.
6 months and 1 day, it's always going to be remembered for what Saturday Night Live was doing of him.
Yeah,
those renditions when it was really, really thick with the attacks on Sean Spicer. I just remember at that point thinking to myself, this is not good that you have a lot of people just laughing at such an important position. This is not who I want representing the president, having to take all these questions from these fake news journalists. So, I'm pleased that Sean Spicer's gone. I kind of liked him more at the beginning, but it's just not very significant.
No. However, we didn't actually say the reason why he decided to resign was because Trump decided to hire Anthony Scaramucci, whose nickname is the Mooch, to become the new White House communications director. Now, there's been rumors that these guys don't really like each other very much, but or that Sean Spicer was unhappy with that decision. But the more that I've learned about Scaramucci here in the past couple of days, I really like the guy. Did you watch his press conference when he first got there?
No.
The very first thing he did, he said, "Hi, everyone." He walked up on the podium. He said, "Hi, everyone. I'm the new White House communications director. By the way, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, you're now my press secretary." And then he went on to, he literally had hammered the journalists. And there's a famous picture now where he kissed them all goodbye. And it was he pretty much said on Twitter, he said, "I hope you enjoy that kiss I blew to you, because that's the only thing you're going to get from me for the next 8 years." So, and he also later, during an interview with Breitbart News Radio, or it might have been Hannity or something like that, he was talking to them, and he said, "Look, we're going to go after these White House leakers. If I find out that any of the press corps is leaking anything, I'm going to fire them all." And
nice.
So, this is the type of guy that he is, and he has a great track record. He used to host a show on, I think it was CNBC or Fox Business, one of the two. But yeah, I think he's perfect for the White House communications director. He's great for the Trump team. He wasn't a pro-Trump person at the beginning. People were pointing out a lot of his tweets back from early on with the campaign promise. He was originally a Scott Walker supporter and then moved on to Jeb Bush. However, since then, ever since Trump became the nominee, he has been super pro-Trump, has stood behind him all the way, and I think he's going to add a lot to Trump's agenda.
So with the Mooch, along with Sarah Huckabee Sanders, we've really rebuffed our communications to the media.
Very much so, yes.
And hopefully we can see some good results with that. Let's go into the next thing we have here. So the Trump Voter Fraud Commission is now purging voter rolls. You got the stuff on this, Bobby?
Yeah, this was something that, we talked about us wanting this to happen. So it looks like this is finally actually starting to happen. And Trump's Voter Fraud Commission, which is being led by Vice President Mike Pence, they're finally starting to purge voter rolls. Now, if you remember, the last couple of weeks they were asking states for voter data, but like 44 states refused to give any information.
But a lot of those have actually given up their fight now.
They have. And in doing so, the government has started to, go through that and recognize some people that are on the voter rolls that shouldn't be there, whether they're people who are dead or people who they know are illegal, or just even if they're not dead or illegal, just shouldn't be registered to vote where they are. For instance, if they're registered in multiple states or something like that, they're finally starting to purge and just deact, pretty much take away their voter registration in a sense. And it's happened a lot in swing states. Like I think they said, I believe it was North Carolina and Colorado have seen the most drops. Like Colorado has seen like 2,000 or 3,000 people taken off their voter rolls, and North Carolina's had a few hundred.
Did Colorado go to Hillary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Narrowly, it's like 2.5% or something like that. Colorado was one of the few states where I got wrong. I thought we were going to skim by with Colorado, but we slightly lost it. But I made up for that.
I predicted Hillary for Colorado.
Yeah, I made up for that, and like Wisconsin, I thought Hillary was going to get it, but Trump got it, and that's more electoral votes than Colorado. So
yeah. Anyways,
that's getting off topic, but yeah, this is something that I'm glad that we're finally actually doing. We're cutting people off the voter rolls who shouldn't be there, and yeah, here's an actual number from the article we're reading. There was a elections official in Denver, Colorado. Her office alone said that they saw a 2,150% increase in voter registration withdrawals over the last couple of weeks. So not only are they purging the voter rolls, but they're seeing a lot of people are withdrawing voluntarily their voter registrations mostly in fear of getting caught.
Now, one reason why they might be doing that is because they are an illegal alien that's registered.
Yes.
That is extremely likely. Which is, why we're purging this voter roll to begin with. I mean, we need to get these people off the elections. I don't want my elections subverted by foreign interests, just coming across the border and then voting for, they voted for the Democrat.
Yeah.
So it's not too much to ask that we do this. And, we've seen pretty good progress so far in this voter fraud stuff. And the commission's not going to be done until next year.
Yeah.
Prior to the 2018 elections.
It'll be done several months beforehand because the 2018 elections aren't until November, and it's going to be done around, I think they said it was like May or June.
Yeah.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So
something around there.
That's about 5 to 6 months beforehand.
So we should be in a good position heading into these elections. I do so believe.
Very well, yes.
And, the big thing is always just, voter fraud doesn't exist. Donald Trump is undermining our democracy by inflating some sort of lie about voter fraud doesn't exist. I mean, you follow the show, what we've done over the last couple months. We usually have 1 or 2 voter fraud stories a week, I'd say. And just the evidence is piling up. And you look at how quickly people are withdrawing out of Colorado. Yeah, something's up. And we're going to find a lot of interesting evidence by the end of this commission.
And also, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about, just voter fraud in general. I know we don't actually have an article here to talk about it, but Texas is currently having their special session of Congress, and one of the things that they're going after is mail-in ballot fraud,
yes,
which there has been a lot of in Texas, especially up in the Dallas area, where Governor Abbott has been very...
There was a scheme they caught out of Dallas a couple months ago.
He's been very vocal in wanting to get this addressed, and it's there's a bill that's going to... I'm not sure the exact specifics of what it does, but it's going after that in a very big fashion, and I think it's going to get voted on it next week or so, and it looks like it's probably going to pass. So there's a good chance that Texas alone is going to be tackling the issue of voter fraud very, very soon.
Nice. Do you want to go into this next thing that we have?
Yes.
So the next thing that we have here is Trump cutting regulations at a record rate. Now, you look back to what Donald Trump proposed before he went into the White House. He wanted to have a measure where you have to cut 2 regulations to pass a new one. Now, he used an executive order once into office to cement this, into stone, this idea. But the numbers we're getting back, actually, as far as how he's cutting regulations, are spectacular. For every new law that's been implemented, there has been, on average, 16 regulations eliminated. And they have to do this in the same industry. So if I want to propose a new regulation in manufacturing, I have to cut specifically manufacturing regulations. So we're getting the state out of the way of our economy and letting it do what it needs to do. Flourish without the government prodding and telling it what to do.
And that's data that's actually coming from the Office of Management and Budget. So that's actual official government data that we're looking at here.
Which, you look at how they're passing regulations under Obama, it was so excessive. And there were many regulations which they had ready to go, and they were just never able to, implement. We are undoing currently the entire Obama legacy of regulations in industries, and it does bode well for our future.
Yeah, and not only that, there's some more data here, some numbers that I think they're very interesting to read. They said in the last 5 months of fiscal year 2016, the Obama administration imposed $6.8 billion in annualized costs from economically significant rules, meaning they put regulations to take that are $6.8 billion pretty much worth of regulations. By contrast, the Trump administration has imposed less than $0 in regulatory costs during the first 5 months. And also, during Obama's first 5 months, Obama imposed $3.1 billion in new costs, whereas Trump has cut regulations, saving about $22 million. So
it is night and day.
Yeah.
Something else. So really, really super stuff happening there, and I know it is not the most, front page story to talk about, but this is a huge win for Donald Trump.
Huge win. Especially, in areas like manufacturing, like you said. There's a reason why.
We have some good numbers.
Yeah, we're going to talk
well.
about manufacturing here in a minute, but when you understand this is kind of like a backbone to everything, a lot of other things start to make sense too.
Yeah, but with that said, let's head into the economy and kind of get into some stuff that we have on that front.
All right.
Now, the first thing that we wanted to talk about this week for the economy was the White House on Monday laid out their strategy for renegotiating NAFTA. Now, what in general we're looking to do is to improve the U.S. trade balance and reduce the trade deficit with NAFTA countries, which are Mexico and Canada. And it also has told us that we should not expect to see any new negotiations as far as NAFTA is going until August 16th. So we still have a couple weeks before this even really comes into play at all.
Well, yeah, I mean, when we were talking about earlier, several months ago now on the show, they were saying that they were looking to renegotiate NAFTA around, August or September?
Yeah.
So this is pretty much right in line with that, right?
Yeah, it's right on track to where he aimed to put it. So, I'm sorry. At the moment, we don't have too many specifics, though, on what he wants to do to make the trade deficit go away. That's the one thing.
Well, I mean, if you look at the article that we're reading here, it says that they're pretty much wanting to put in NAFTA 2.0. So it's not like we're trying to completely get out of NAFTA, just renegotiate large parts of it. For instance, they said that NAFTA has actually NAFTA has quadrupled trade among the three nations, surpassing $1 trillion in 2015. However, over the decade stretching 2010, since 2010, the United States has lost 6 million manufacturing jobs. So even though trade is up, like you said, it's going after that trade deficit. It's getting jobs back. It's stuff like that we're really trying to look at.
To reduce our trade deficit, we need to be making more stuff here. And This is the big reason why we're renegotiating NAFTA. We're losing so many manufacturing jobs, and that is widening our trade deficit because we are only importing goods. We are not exporting. Now, American exports right now are up significantly since, Trump's got into office, but we can still continue to see this happen.
Yeah, and to look just how bad our trade deficit is, with Mexico alone, since 2007, we've had a $60 billion trade deficit with Mexico. So, fixing stuff like that, getting that more towards the right direction can go a long way with jobs, a long way with the economy and everything like that.
Yeah. Let's get into the next thing that we have here, which, is it food stamps, or are we going to talk about the manufacturing?
Let's talk about manufacturing first and then go back to food stamps.
Okay. So, yes, mining, manufacturing, and construction are all up right now from the first quarter of fiscal year 2017.
How much up are they, Enzo?
Why don't you tell me, Bobby?
I will tell you. So, in the first quarter, mining is up 21.6%. I know we talked a lot about how there was that first new coal mine that opened up in Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And states like West Virginia and Kentucky, a lot of them are seeing a lot of mining boosts. But
that's
also,
indicative of this number we have here.
Yes. Construction, up 5.6%. That's part of the reason why stocks like Caterpillar are up like 25% since the election, because Trump promised a lot of more infrastructure spending. And that literally just means construction and government contracts. And that's part of, that's been part of his platform. And so far we're starting to see the numbers that really go along with that. But not only that, but manufacturing, which is another thing that Trump ran on, up 4.7% in the first quarter. And these percentages, these are not...
Those are not insignificant.
These are not
numbers
insignificant.
At all.
A 4.7% increase, when you look at the fact that
it's billions of dollars.
The U.S. economy grew at an annual pace of only 1.4% in the first quarter. Now, a lot of people thought Trump might have like 3 or 4% economic growth.
And which is what you want to aim for.
Yeah, and it looks like, in the first quarter we didn't really stay on track for that. But when you consider that even though it was only up 1.4%, mining up 21.6% compared to the rest of the economy, construction up 5.6%, manufacturing up 4.7%.
Along with energy being up right now as well. Stock market is at an all-time high.
It is, and it's just incredible how, just how good things are going right now.
Which I think that kind of plays into some optimism numbers, which we're going to talk about later. But do you want to talk about this food stamp stuff now?
Yeah, this is an article that I really wanted to talk about because it just shows, just how well things are also improving. But food stamp usage is at its lowest level in 7 years. Now, a lot of people complained about the Obama administration because there was like 49 or something million people that were on food stamps. There was a huge increase. But they said that in the fiscal year 2017, there were 42 million people, 42.6 million people that were on food stamps. And in 2010, it was at 40.3 million. And this number of 42.6 is the lowest since 2010. So it's declined significantly. But it's actually been declining for the last couple of years. It topped out in 2013 at 47.6 million. So it's slowly been going down, but since Trump's gotten into office, it's kind of almost like it's fell off a cliff in terms of the number. So I would not be surprised if the number of people drops even below 40 million within the next couple of years.
Which should be phenomenal. We don't want people using, our welfare systems if they don't need to. And with the way that the economy is going, I don't think people need to as much. And we're seeing the results of that right now.
Right. These programs that we have, the point of the programs shouldn't be for people to live off of them forever. It should be for, people that might be in a hard time, give them a little push, a little boost to get back going again. And so I'm glad that the number of people is going down. And keep in mind, these are net numbers. So, there are still people being added, but more people are being dropped or are dropping themselves than are being added. So in general, this is good. It's good for the economy. It's good for government spending. It's part of the reason why, if you looked at the updated numbers, the U.S. government debt has actually dropped $130 billion since Trump's gotten into office. And that's very significant.
That's very good.
Yeah, considering like in the first 6 months of Obama's presidency, it went up by like $500 billion. We're down by $130 billion. That's outstanding.
It's day and night. It's the opposite of what Obama.
You look at the map of government debt going up, and it doesn't ever drop. It just keeps going up. It never goes down. We're finally starting to see it go down, even though 130 billion compared to almost 20 trillion is not that big. If anything, you're keeping it from going up for just a little bit longer. And government debt is a huge problem to our country. But stuff like this, seeing that food stamp usage is at its lowest level in 7 years, very, very good news.
Yeah. Which, it also kind of ties into some other good news that we have here, which Donald Trump in his first 6 months, which we cracked 6 months this week. Donald Trump, in the first 6 months of his presidency, the overall wealth of the United States has increased by $4 trillion. Do you have the specifics beyond that, Bobby?
Yeah. Since President Trump's inauguration, we've added roughly $4.1 trillion to the nation's overall wealth, affecting all Americans with a 401k, an IRA, a savings account, loans, stocks, essentially anyone with a dime in the market. Now, like we were saying, the stock market's up 18% since the election.
That's huge.
It's up 10% since the inauguration. You never see such a rapid increase. But yeah, this is something that affects everybody positively. Because if you have money in the stock market, it's increased since then, especially if you have a diversified portfolio. But the one thing I wanted to point out, though, was that a lot of people think that we're in a bubble right now. And
yes.
I would say that, I can understand if you're looking simply at like the stock market, that would make sense. But there are a lot of leading factors. There's leading factors, congruent factors, and lagging factors to show how well or if the stock market's going to collapse. And those leading factors are always indicative of if it's going to go down. And none of those leading factors are being shown right now. So if anyone's predicting a stock market collapse or the economy collapsing, there's no indication of that happening other than the fact that the stock market's gone up a lot in a short period of time, which normally does mean, it's going to collapse.
Yeah.
But still, even if it was to go down a little bit, it's not going to completely collapse. The numbers are there. We just looked over the numbers. Jobs are returning, manufacturing is up, all these different things. Nothing is indicating that the economy or the stock market is going to collapse in a significant way anytime soon. That's just me trying to point something out that I hear a lot.
Even on top of having very shaky politics in the country, which which does play a factor into things as the stock market.
Yeah, back when we had the travel ban first go into place, both times when they instituted the travel ban, I believe it was on a Sunday, and I knew, okay, the next day I bet you airline stocks are down. Stocks like American Airlines, Delta, those sort of things, they were down like 4% the next day, each time. And so it's like, you can use the what's coming out of Washington to predict what the market is going to do. And you're absolutely right. Even in, with all this healthcare shakeup, the stock market still hit an all-time high earlier this week again.
Which I think, the average person on the street should just take that as an indicator. Yeah, politics are pretty divisive right now. Things are pretty hectic. But it's better than you think it is.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Definitely smoother than what they make it out to be on the fake news.
And I'll tell you one thing about the way the stock market works. It reacts more to change than it does the status quo. So if you think about it, by the Senate not repealing or replacing Obamacare, nothing changes. Everything stays the same. Whereas if you change it, people don't know, okay, is this going to end up being good or is this going to end up being bad? But as long as nothing changes, the market is already factoring in everything that's already in place. So, I'm not saying that you should just leave Obamacare in place to let the market keep going up. But even if you were to repeal it, you might actually see the market go down. You might actually see it go up. It's you don't know how that's going to impact things. So if you're just looking at that alone, political instability in Washington, in a way, kind of helps keep the market from doing anything it might not want to do.
Yeah. Let's go into the last thing that we have here for the economy, which is also some good news. Gas prices are at a 12-year low. Do you have the stuff on that, Bobby?
I do. They said that the nationwide price for gas closed this week on July 17th at $2.39 a gallon, which is down from $2.47 a gallon when Trump took office. However, they said that over the July 4th weekend, which I know that was about 3 weeks ago, gas prices were at the lowest level since 2005. And they still are as of this week as well. They said that gas prices fell in 46 states. Only Illinois, Oklahoma, Washington, and Washington, D.C. saw their prices increase, although those increases were only by 1 cent a gallon on average. Now, I know gas here in Texas is about $2.05. The last couple weeks it was about $1.90-ish, but it's gone up a little bit. They said that the cheapest gas in the country right now is actually in South Carolina, where it's at $1.90.
Oh, wow.
But they said that today consumers can find gas for $2 or less a gallon at 1 of every 4 gas stations in the country.
That's really significant.
Yeah. And I know that, for instance, San Antonio, Texas, gas prices tend to be a little bit lower there than they do in Austin. And especially here in San Marcos, being a college town, it seems to be about 10 cents more expensive here than everywhere else. Even if you go a couple miles north to the cities north of us, you find it for easily $1.95 a gallon. So, that's very good. Having low gas prices helps consumers a lot. It's cheaper to travel. Usually gas prices tend to go up in the summer with the additives that they add for more people driving just to help the environment out. But even so, it's still at the lowest point in 12 years. But the next thing that's part of the story, though, is Chuck Schumer, who is definitely our favorite Democrat.
My favorite person to hate in general, because I just dislike Chuck Schumer so much. But yeah, someone who made a dumb statement named Chuck Schumer.
Yeah, and he said, we're just going to paraphrase what he said, but he said gas prices are never going down, but they are. So, and this was from an interview from a while back. It wasn't a recent interview. But he was just talking about, with Trump being president, he's like, yeah, gas prices, they're not going to go down.
And they have.
But they have. So what does he know?
Yeah. Let's get now into the science and technology portion of the show this week. I know you have the 2 stories that we have this week.
I do. So the first one is something that I'm not going to say it's concerning very much, but it's just something worth pointing out.
It could be.
It very well could be, especially if you're I'm going to say if you're in the minority communities a lot. But facial recognition software is soon coming to police body cameras. And this was an initiative that's coming from device maker Motorola. We all know Motorola. But they said they're working on artificial intelligence software with the startup company to build a real-time learning for a person of interest search on police body cameras. Specifically, there's a model here, but it's one of the popular models that police use for their body cameras. But pretty much what it would be able to do is if you're having a police search for a person of interest, it's going to be able to do facial recognition software in real time and upload that to police computers. So if you're a police officer walking down the street with a body camera, you might not personally be able to see who those people are, but your computer or someone who's at a computer will be able to recognize those people in real time, and you'll be able to identify them, just as you're walking down the street. So I do think, it has its uses, and I understand that there is a lot of, privacy issues that can go along with that. I personally myself feel that that's, it might be an invasion of privacy in a way. However, it's just something...
It might serve as an aid as well.
It very well might. If you're searching for a suspect and you know who the suspect is, police officer might not know who that person is, but, your facial recognition software is going to be able to identify that person with a fairly good level of accuracy. You're walking down the street and, it might scan someone, and then your dispatch calls you and says, hey, that dude right there wearing the red shirt, that's the guy we're looking for. You can go after those people a lot easier, which, nowadays it's something where you're maybe not exactly able to do. So, that's just something worth pointing out. I think just know that that's probably going to be coming here in the future. It's definitely, it's not something that's implemented right now, but it's coming. Just be aware of that. And if you have an interaction with a police officer that's wearing a body camera, have it in your brain that they probably are using that software, so they do know who you are.
Yes.
Now,
not that you should not tell the police who you are.
Yeah. But I mean, unless you're suspected of doing a crime, you don't have to identify yourself. They're going to identify you for yourself. So, that's something that might change here in the future. But, getting on to the next story that we wanted to talk about, this is something that
Very interesting stuff.
This is something that I definitely wanted to talk about. But Elon Musk says that he has the approval to build a Hyperloop from New York City to Washington, D.C. Now, if you don't know what a Hyperloop is, it's essentially a vacuum-sealed tube. Like, Enzo, you know how there's the videos, a lot of, mostly from back in, like, the 80s and 90s, where in, like, office buildings, they would put something in a tube, and then it would stick it in, and it would just, whoop, it would, like, shoot it up into the area.
It's like what you do when you go to the drive-thru for the bank.
Exactly. Imagine that, but with people in the tube. That's essentially what a Hyperloop is. It's a long tube that's built. People get into a capsule, and it's able to go very, very fast, using, not very much energy or anything, because it's vacuum sealed. It's pretty much using, like, electromagnets to launch a thing and stop it. I've been a strong supporter of Hyperloops ever since I found out about them about 5 or 6 years ago. There's another company called Hyperloop One that's actually building prototypes out in the desert in Nevada, Arizona, and California right now. But Elon Musk himself, the owner of SpaceX and Tesla, he wants to build those. And he says he has the approval to build one from New York City to Washington, D.C., and it would make stops in Philadelphia and Baltimore on the way. Now, what's important is to factor this in. If it was built and you had a straight shot without any stops, you could go from New York City to Washington, D.C. in 29 minutes. You can't even get from one side of Manhattan to the other side of Manhattan in 29 minutes.
But now we're going across different cities.
Yeah. And
potentially.
Yes. And, companies like that, they want to build them nationwide from major city to major city. But it's important just to know that, that's the most traveled area of the country, is the corridor from New York City to Washington, D.C. with that area. I think it's like a tenth or something of all Americans live there in that corridor alone. So by having this Hyperloop get built, you're going to revolutionize travel between those cities. You'd take people off the roads, you'd take people off of planes. They'd just be able to get in these tubes and whoop, and then whoop back.
Which,
it would do it.
Taking the Hyperloop, it's cost effective for the consumer as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is some very interesting stuff, and it could really change the way that we're getting around in a way that we've never really considered up until this point.
Yeah, and he says he has the approval. He didn't actually provide any documents or anything to show that he does. So I'm betting it was probably just a phone call with, like, I don't want to say the FAA, but, like, probably the like transportation secretary or some office like that. Probably gave him verbal approval before they actually work out the details with actual legal documents. But that's something, and I hope it's true. I hope it actually happens. And yeah, so that's something to look forward to as well.
Very interesting stuff.
The last thing I wanted to say, though, before we go to the next story, is they said that if you built it, it would run parallel to an existing project that's being built in California, which is what I'd mentioned earlier about companies building their prototype models out there. That company is trying to build one from Los Angeles to San Francisco, as well as one in Texas that would go from the major cities in Texas around. So it's very possible that here in the next decade or so, if those, if they can have their funding and if they work, we might actually see the construction of Hyperloops here within our own cities. If they had one from Dallas to San Antonio, or one from El Paso to San Antonio to Houston, something like that, you could, like I said, you could revolutionize travel. If you think about the distance between Washington, D.C. and New York City, you could go from San Antonio to Dallas in half an hour. That's a 4-hour drive normally. That tells you just how much faster it is for these things.
Austin to San Antonio would be very quick.
It would.
That'd be very handy.
That would be maybe, 5-6 minutes. That's
something
usually an hour to an hour and a half drive alone.
Yeah, it's like 75 miles or so.
Yeah. they would probably, if, let's say they had one, obviously you're going to have stops in major cities along the way. If there was one from Dallas to San Antonio, they'd probably have stops in Waco, Round Rock, Austin, maybe even San Marcos and New Braunfels, if you understand the geography of this area. But yeah, that's something to look forward to. I hope they do, and that's all I have to say about that.
Cool. Let's get into some immigration now.
Open the door! Immigration!
La migra, vamos, niños!
This week in immigration.
Okay, so the first thing we have here on immigration is some stuff from the ICE chief, who is Thomas D. Homan, who I believe he was actually from the Obama area. He was a carryover.
Yeah, he's a holdover, but he's definitely on our side.
Oh, he's one of the best people in the government at the moment. We got a couple statistics out of him, and then some other things that they're focusing at the moment. So he says that illegal border crossings have crashed to almost 70%, which is a historic low. Arrest inside the country of illegal aliens has jumped up 40%, and the demand for illegal criminals in local jails has jumped by 80%.
Amazing.
Crazy numbers. Good numbers. Stuff that we want to see. But the main thing that we want to talk about here with some stuff that he's been talking about is he is planning on focusing on sanctuary cities more. And also, they've been cleared to hire 10,000 more ICE agents. Do you have some stuff on that, Bobby?
Yes, I do. So, he said that his plans are to flood sanctuary cities with ICE agents. He's been given the okay to hire 10,000 new agents, like you said, and they're all going to go to track down illegals in those havens. Now, there's about 300 plus sanctuary cities in the U.S. that don't cooperate with ICE, and they also ignore requests about criminal aliens within their own cities. Cities like, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, San Francisco, stuff like that, those cities actually refuse to let ICE officers into their jails to seize illegal aliens. By having these 10,000 new agents, you're going to be able to go into these cities, and you're going to be able to deport a lot more people. Like we being said, there's, they say that there's the estimated 11 million illegal immigrants in the country. We believe that's a lot higher than it actually, or the actual number's a lot higher than that.
Yeah.
However, people are like, oh, you can't deport 11 million people. Like you've been saying, we don't have to. A lot of them are going to self-deport. A lot of people are going to stop coming. It's obvious with the data.
We're seeing that right now. We have
border
stories.
crossings are down 70%.
We have stories that say that
we
right
talk
now.
about this every week. But that being said, there is still that hurdle in the way of sanctuary cities not cooperating with the government in doing this. But you're now having ICE hiring 10,000 more people to go into those cities to directly do this. So on the immigration front, that's some very good news. They haven't been hired yet.
Yes.
But they are going to get hired.
Now, one thing I want to say before we go on to the next story is I want people to keep this in mind when we talk about deporting illegal aliens in prisons. 14% of the prison population of the United States is Mexican nationals. That's just Mexicans alone. We are we are paying astronomical numbers to house these people when we really shouldn't be. We really shouldn't be. They should just be going back, and hopefully they cooperate with us so they do go back. And I mean, the numbers of getting illegals out of jail and deported, as I just said earlier, 80% up. So yeah, things are looking up in that department. Very much so.
Yeah, so that's something to look forward to. And they said that he was testifying before the House Committee on Appropriations for the 2018 budget. That's when he got the permission to hire those new people. So it'll probably be next year by the time they actually get around to hiring them, when the budget kicks in. So
those 10,000 guys are going to do a lot of work, though.
They are. Just imagine what a few hundred ICE agents can do, let alone 10,000 spread across the country, every single day actively working to deport as many illegals from sanctuary cities as you can. That's really, really good.
Yeah. Let's go into the next story that we have under immigration. And this is actually related to the travel ban. Now, the Supreme Court has now allowed a grandparent exemption, because you remember when they passed it in the Supreme Court, they said, like, close family, but they didn't define it.
Yeah.
So originally grandparents weren't allowed on the exemption, even though most people, I think, would consider grandparents as close family.
Yeah, that was one of those things where when they said that grandparents weren't allowed, a lot of people, even on the right, figured that that probably wouldn't hold up for very long, and grandparents would get allowed. So this does not surprise me at all. It doesn't really make me angry or anything.
I don't necessarily want it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want it, but it's not like this is any
it was going to happen, though.
Yeah, we knew it was going to happen. We were surprised it didn't happen to begin with. So, if anything, this is the process of the system kind of catching up with itself. However,
but on top of what we have here, though, we have some great news. Really high energy news. Now, we have with the travel ban the exemption for grandparents now, but not refugees. Do you have some specifics on that?
Yeah, that's precisely it. They said that the court on Wednesday blocked the order as it applies to refugees, but not the expanded list of relatives. So what this means is that the U.S. can potentially, if this holds up in court for the time being, we can completely ban refugees from coming into this country.
Spectacular.
Yeah.
Amazing news. Amazing news.
Yes, amazing news. Now, obviously, this is temporary. The Supreme Court still is going to hear the case in October for the travel ban, and that may or may not impact the rest of refugees. But, that being said, potentially speaking right now, we don't have to let any refugees in at all for the time being. I know that we probably will.
Which Donald Trump ran on not bringing refugees in.
Yes, exactly.
And the numbers are already down on that, but now it potentially can go down to 0.
Right. But yeah, one of the things that they were specifically talking about in terms of refugees was when they talked about having a bona fide relationship, when they're saying, like, brothers and sisters and now grandparents. One of the other things was people who previously had a job already in the United States for stuff like that. But they said there were 24,000 refugees who had already been assigned to a charity or a religious organization in the U.S., and they said that that is now not enough to classify as a bona fide relationship. So what was happening was there was a lot of charities and religious organizations that were trying to sponsor refugees to get them into the country.
And once you let them do that, you might as well not have a policy at all.
Exactly, because they can pretty much, quote-unquote sponsor these refugees, bring them in, and then obviously, they don't do anything with them, but they get them into the country, and that's their point. A lot of them are pretty much just serving as left-wing political organizations doing this, calling themselves charities. But that being said, that's now not enough, so you can ban those refugees from coming in.
Very good news, very good news. Let's go into the next story that we have here. So, a California judge is refusing to reinstate the sanctuary city ban. Do you have the stuff on that, Bobby?
I do. This was a judge out of San Francisco who is refusing to reinstate President Trump's sanctuary city order. And if you remember, Trump signed the executive order to slash funding from sanctuary cities that limit their cooperations with the federal immigration authorities. And this district court judge, who is William Orrick, he is keeping up his injunction, which he said back in April against Trump's executive order, because of a lawsuit that happened in San Francisco in California, because of course it would happen there. But that being said, because of the fact that one judge has made this decision, like, Trump's executive order is stalled for now, which that shows you how stupid the political system here in the U.S. is.
Where one judge's opinion can compromise the entire safety of a state.
Mm-hmm.
Insane stuff. This is not a serious country.
Yeah, so I am absolutely certain that this is something that will get appealed. It still probably has to go through at least two more levels before it would reach the Supreme Court. But it's really, really frustrating that this keeps happening, especially in liberal strongholds like San Francisco and Seattle and Hawaii. It's where all these things come out of. That's because the Democrats know that's the only place that they can actually win, is where they have the judges. Stuff like the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, stuff like that. But yeah, I think that if it gets appealed up, seems like something that we will probably win. But it's just, like I said, it's frustrating that we have to keep going through this process every single time something like this happens.
Yes, and, you look back to what we were talking about, I believe maybe 2 months ago. It continued up to this point. California has been pushing to be a sanctuary state.
Yeah.
And now the judges are just kind of ruling in favor as though that's a thing, and it's not. It's insanity. It's crazy. I hate it.
But anyways,
do you want to go into the next thing?
Let's go ahead and do it.
So, kind of, I'd say pretty good news. Kind of funny, almost. In a sense.
I think it's funny more
Very
than anything else.
Yeah. So the flow of asylum seekers crossing into Canada from the United States has risen as far as the numbers go for June. Do you have the specifics for that, Bobby?
I do. They said that it's actually dropped in the last 2 months before June, but then in June, boom, it went back up. Specifically, they said that there were 884 refugee claimants who crossed the border into Canada in June, bringing the total for the first half of the year to about 4,300. They said that most of them went to the province of Quebec, and some of them went to Manitoba. But they said that most of the seekers who... this article is coming out of Reuters. They said that most of the asylum seekers who talked to Reuters said that they left the United States because they feared deportation in light of Trump's immigration crackdown.
Yep.
So, yeah, this is literally people who are like, uh-oh, I'm going to get deported.
This is self-deportation. This is self-deportation. As we were just saying prior, these people can see the writing on the wall, and they make a decision, and have fun in Canada, They have a lot of refugees there, so you'll fit in. But, not our problem.
Yeah, and they said that what makes it funny also is in Canada's laws, if people are claiming refugee status, they're detained and held for questioning and a security screening before they're actually even allowed to file their refugee claims. The reason why that's important is because a lot of these people have spent time in the United States. So by saying, I'm a refugee from like Syria or I'm a refugee from Iraq, it's like, no, dude, you spent the last 4 months in the United States. Like, what are you doing? You're not a refugee to Canada anymore. So that actually puts them at a disadvantage. Also at a disadvantage, too, because they probably get sent back. But that being said, they said that if you look at the numbers of people crossing into Canada as refugees from the U.S., it's on track to be the highest number since 2011.
Pretty good stuff.
Yep.
Let's get into the last story for immigration before we get into the bottom stack of the national news.
Yeah, this
happened today, didn't it?
This happened this morning.
And this happened in San Antonio, which I know you're in San Antonio all the time.
I am, yeah.
Do you know where specifically this happened in San Antonio?
Well, first let's say exactly what happened before we say where it was at.
Yes. So it was like a trailer.
Yeah, it was a tractor trailer.
Tractor trailer. Big truck. And there were illegal aliens in there, roughly 40 or so?
That's what I read.
Now, it was really hot yesterday. It was 101 degrees in San Antonio, and it didn't drop to 90 until 10 p.m. Now,
somewhere in Texas.
These illegal aliens in this tractor trailer were in the parking lot of a Walmart. And over the course of the day, I forgot how they found these people, but they found, the tractor trailer, opened it up, and 10 illegals were dead.
Well, actually, of the 40 or so that were in there, 8 were found dead in the truck. 2 died later at the hospital.
Oh, okay.
So,
now,
the death toll is up to 10 right now. But that being said, when it's 100 degrees outside, it can easily reach 130, 140 degrees in a vehicle. So when you're looking at a tractor trailer like that sitting out in the parking lot for God knows how long they were there, it's no surprise that more than 8 of them died from the heat.
And about 30 or so had serious,
Yeah, a lot of them were taken
serious
to the hospital.
injuries.
Mm-hmm.
I think every single one was at least taken to the hospital.
Yeah, they said that there was an estimated about 100 of them originally who started the trip. So the 40 or so that were there were the only ones who were left. So that means all the other ones had already gotten out of the truck at some point, somewhere along the way. But, this is nothing that, obviously we're against illegal immigration. But that being said, it's still sad to hear stories like this of, just how bad things.
Human trafficking's dangerous, and by us being strong in our stance on being against illegal immigration and, building a wall and not letting people come here, they're not going to kill themselves trying to come here because they just won't come here.
Exactly. And but to answer your question that you had earlier about where it was at, this was at the parking lot at a Walmart on Interstate 35 on the southwest side of San Antonio. So, if you look at a map of San Antonio, I know where this area is at. I've been down there a couple times. I don't know exactly which Walmart it was personally. However, if you understand a map of San Antonio, this was near the area of around Lackland Air Force Base.
Ah, okay.
So
I know where that is.
Yeah, so if you know where that's at and you understand just kind of just a basic roadmap of how Interstate 35 kind of goes through that area, just imagine that and you're pretty much going to be within a general region of where it happened.
Okay.
It's not in the area near where I go a lot, but yeah, just a sad story all around. Hopefully stuff like this doesn't happen in the future as we crack down more on illegal immigration. People won't be risking their lives to come here like this.
Yes.
And so, it's sad. Hopefully it doesn't happen again. It probably will, which is sad to say as well. But, yeah, I don't really have anything else to say than that.
I don't know. Let's get into the rest of the stuff we have for the national news, though. We have a lot of polls in the bottom of the stack, but the first thing we wanted to get into was the John McCain stuff. John McCain was diagnosed with a brain tumor this week, and it's very serious, very serious. You got some of the specifics on that?
So serious. It's more serious than they originally thought. They said that after he went in for that blood clot removal, which he did last week, above his left eye, they were considering further treatment. They said that subsequent tissue pathology revealed that a primary brain tumor known as glioblastoma was associated with the blood clot. Now, this is what they said was a particularly aggressive form of brain cancer. So, yeah, I'm not really the biggest fan of John.
Not a fan of John McCain.
I don't ever want to wish harm or anything negative on people. But that being said, I don't think he's the type of person to resign because of this. I would love it if he would resign. What do you think, Enzo?
I don't lose any sleep at night because John McCain has a brain tumor. Now, one of the things that was really messed up when this all occurred was after we got the news of John McCain having this brain tumor, there was a release on his Twitter. John McCain has a Twitter that senators generally do that to push policies around and whatnot. And his office made a statement on the ceasefire that we're trying to negotiate in Syria, saying that we should not do this ceasefire. We should continue to try to go after Assad. So I kind of don't care about the future of militant war hawks who, even when they're on the verge of their own death, the only thing they can think about is more war. Dude, a little different priorities in life when stuff like this hits you. Not trying to stop peace deals.
Yeah, and I have a lot of respect for John McCain in his military career that he had before he became a senator. Since he's become a senator, I have very little respect for him. He's one of my... he is my least favorite Republican in the Senate.
I would say Lindsey Graham, but John McCain, they're the same.
Lindsey Graham's a very close second to me. John McCain more so simply because he's a I guess I could say the word he gets more attention than Lindsey Graham, even though I don't like either of them. That being said, however, yeah, he's not going to resign, I don't think, which is sad because under Arizona state constitution, if a U.S. senator resigns, the person who replaces them by law must be of the same political party. So, I mean,
we just get a probably better senator.
So, that being said, we would get a better Republican senator out of that. Yeah, I think you worded it very well. Even though it's kind of sad to hear that happen to him, I'm not exactly losing any sleep over it. So
I heard, following the news on this, like statistically, what John McCain is dealing with, like the odds of him living past the next 5 years is like 10%. So
it's 4% actually.
4%?
The American Cancer Society puts the 5-year survival rate for patients over age 55 at about 4%.
Oh wow.
So, I mean, I guess that means that John McCain only has a 4% chance of living the next 5 years, especially since they said it was a particularly aggressive form of it. But if you think about it, he was just reelected in 2016. So that means there's there's only a 4% chance he's going to make it till 2022 before either having to resign or dying, in which case, he will be replaced. There's no way he's going to be able to run for re-election in 2022, especially at his age alone, plus now all his constituents knowing this. So I think in terms of just the way that the country will go, the way that the Senate will go, I mean, don't take it the wrong way when I say it's going to be better when he's gone, but he is going to be gone here in the next few years, one way or another. That part will be good for the Senate, will be good for the country. I'm actually going to say it. I hope he doesn't die while in office, because that would be a very sad thing. I would like him to just take the respectable thing and just say, you know what, I have this, I would need to resign. Who knows, if this has been affecting his judgment at all. It might have been, it might not have been, but yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Let's get into the poll number extravaganza, because
we got a lot of polls today.
A lot of polls. I don't think we've
polls.
ever had more polls than this week. So the first place that we're getting some polls out at the moment is from the Monmouth University Polling Institute. Now, the one that I wanted to talk about first was the 4 in 10 Americans support impeaching Donald Trump, which is actually higher than Nixon at the start of Watergate. Now, I don't really think there is any grounds to impeach Donald Trump for anything.
There isn't at all.
But really, that's just saying people hate this guy so much, they want him impeached. They really don't care about what the reason is. Yeah, I thought that number was pretty startling. There's some other very interesting numbers here. One that I thought was very interesting was 54% of Americans are concerned that Trump may be too friendly towards Russia, which is just like, why do we want to perpetuate this like nonstop hatred of Russia?
Yeah, seriously.
Why can't we have something that's like mutually beneficial to the both of us? Russia's not in a war campaign against us, but they make it out to be.
Now, what's also interesting, regarding just Russia in general, there is some interesting, data out of that same poll. 2 months ago, 73% of people supported continuing the investigation into Russia. Now, only 62% support it.
So still a majority, but it's dropping in strength.
Mm-hmm.
I think, obviously, the Donald Trump Jr. stuff revitalized a lot of that sentiment, because it died before then.
It did, and that's the
It was
entire
dead
reason.
for a couple weeks.
That's the entire reason why they brought this up, is so they could keep talking about it. I was listening to something, I forget what it was earlier, but they brought up the good point that, history is written by the victor. But Donald Trump won, so you think Donald Trump would be able to get the history. But, CNN and MSNBC and all these different news channels, they're risking everything right now. And the entire purpose of this is because they know that, they know that they lost with Trump. They know that things are not going good for them. The entire purpose of just hammering this Russian nonsense all day long is because they want that to be in the history books. They want every time someone to hear, oh, President Trump, have the asterisk next to it saying, oh, but there was definitely this Russian interference with the election. And by just perpetuating this nonsense all day long for months and months and over a year now, that's the stuff that's going to get written in the history books. That's what the future is going to believe.
Which we're going to be talking about this week.
Yeah, they're going to believe that Trump's an illegitimate president because of these different reasons. That's the entire purpose of this investigation. That's the entire purpose of the entire reason why they're talking about Russia so much. Is simply, it's not, like we said, I tend to think that most people in the U.S. don't really care. Especially people on the right know it's nonsense, even though a lot of people on the left know it's nonsense too. But that being said, the entire purpose they're doing this is just so that people in the future who aren't alive right now will have this thought whenever they're reading stuff. So that's just one of the things I wanted to point out.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up. Let's get into some other polls that were interesting. So the next one I want to take a look at was out of the Washington Post. They did a poll on the Democratic Party in general. And only 30 they interviewed about 1,000 Americans.
1,001 Americans, which is the standard number for a poll.
Okay. So it was only 37% of respondents believe that the Democratic Party stands for something.
Now,
that could mean anything.
Yeah. Now, I'll preface this by saying the question they asked was, quote, do you think the Democratic Party currently stands for something or just stands against Trump?
Yeah, so the stands for something was 37%, while 52% of respondents said just stands against Trump.
Yeah, so that's really, really interesting. Now, this poll was taken July 10th to 13th, and even then, that's looking at simply just Democrats alone, not just overall Americans. If you're wondering what the party breakdown of the poll was, it was 35, 23, 35 for Democrat, Republican, Independent. So that's a D plus 12 poll.
Which is
not
indicative of the United States.
It's definitely not indicative of the United States. However, even with a D plus 12, if you look at the internal numbers within parties, those are going to be fairly accurate. So, this 37% of people believing the Democratic Party stands for something, while 52% just stands against Trump. If you factor in the fact that, Democrats are overrepresented by, an actual poll for nationwide should be about D plus 2 or D plus 3. This is D plus 12. So that number probably is right around, I'd say, realistically, it's probably around 58 to 60% of just overall Americans say that the Democratic Party is against Trump.
Now, they also did this with registered voters, and the numbers are actually a little worse. 35% believe that the Democrats stand for something, while 54% felt that they only stand against Trump.
Yeah. And, I tend to agree. The Democrats right now, they do not have a platform. They don't have anything.
Yeah,
all they have is Russia.
What is the Democrat plan for growth in the United States?
What's the Democrat plan for, winning back the Rust Belt states? What's the Democrat plan for winning back middle class, working class voters? They have nothing. And like I said, all they're doing is perpetuating just Russia, Russia, Russia. I haven't heard anything come out of the Democrats at all since the election of how they're going to get themselves back on track. They were completely banking on Hillary winning, and when it didn't happen, that just destroyed everything.
Speaking of Hillary, that brings us into our next poll that we wanted to go over, which shows this was out of CBS News, but who did the poll themselves?
It was a CBS poll, but it was actually done by Bloomberg. Yeah.
So this poll shows that Hillary Clinton right now is even less popular than Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. What are the specifics on those numbers?
The specifics on the numbers are that Bloomberg found that only 39% of Americans as of today, view Hillary Clinton favorably, which is 2 points lower than Donald Trump. So, according to them, only 41% of Americans view Trump favorably. 39% view Clinton favorably. And what's interesting, they said that over 1/5 of Hillary's 2016 voters view her unfavorably now. which is really, really interesting.
That is pretty significant.
Yeah. They said a lot of those negative views were not related to her election loss, but some of them were. But yeah, there's a point here in the article that makes a very, very good point. It says, they appear largely to be more concerned that Democrats have not settled on the best way to approach 2018 and 2020, which is exactly what we were just talking about. They've got no platform for the next 2 to 4 years. They're not going to be able to win back voters by simply saying Russian the entire time. But that being said, if you factor that in, theoretically, if the election was held again today, not only would Trump still win, he'd win by an even bigger margin.
Yeah. So definitely a lot of things pointing in some bad directions for the DNC, and we got some more bad news for them, which is good news for us, but we'll get into that later.
Yeah.
The next thing that we wanted to go into was a poll that was in regards to just liberals themselves and how they manage friendships. Now, the poll itself came out of Pew Research, and nearly 50%, 47% of people that call themselves liberal Democrats stated that if they had a friend that voted for Trump, it would strain that friendship. For all Democrats, that stated at 35% stated the same, while for Republicans, that number went to having a friend that voted for Hillary Clinton was only 13%.
It shows you how tolerant the left is.
Imagine my shock.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a very staggering number, really. I don't have a lot of friends that voted for Hillary Clinton, but the ones I do know, it hasn't changed my relationship with them at all, and them likewise back towards me, the ones that I do know that I consider close friends that voted for Hillary Clinton. But I don't necessarily find it surprising that people that consider themselves liberal Democrats cannot even bring themselves to really be friends with Trump supporters.
Yeah, I don't find that surprising at all. We tend to make fun of Democrats and leftists in our own personal lives here, just talking normal conversations about how they live in bubbles. But the data kind of shows that they do live in bubbles. There was even a guy in the Washington Post himself pointed out, he said 47% of people who voted for Clinton say they have 0 Trump supporting friends. How are you supposed to have a dialogue with people if you don't know anyone on the other side?
How can you understand what brought Donald Trump into the White House if you don't even know anyone that voted for Donald Trump?
And then you go out there and you say that, all Trump supporters are stupid, they don't know what they're talking about, look at Trump, he's so dumb, ha ha ha, when you don't even have any friends. You don't know anybody who actually supports him or why they support him. You don't talk to these people. You're not friends with them. You don't actively engage with them. We are surrounded by leftists, you and me, here in this area, especially, being in a college town, on a college campus, or a city like Austin, very, very leftist. We're surrounded by these people all the time. We know who they are. We know their talking points. We know what they believe and why they believe it. Yet they actively don't go out to try to understand us, which, that's more indicative of who you and I are as people, or some of our friend group, because we tend to be more policy oriented than anything else, especially. But that being said, it is true. People tend to live in bubbles. Liberals more so, according to this. Like we said, the poll shows only 13% of Republicans stated that if they had a friend who voted for Hillary Clinton, it would strain their relationship. Now that probably does have to do with the fact that Trump won.
Yes.
I'm definitely going to say that's true. I still
think that number for Republicans would be low if Hillary won, though.
Oh, yeah. If Hillary had won, it would probably be around maybe 20 to 25%, probably double what it is. But that being said, 20-25% is so much lower than 35% for Democrats.
Or 47% for people that call themselves liberal Democrats.
Which I guess would be the far left.
I don't really know what delineates that so much with their polling, but
probably far left to more moderate Democrats.
There was one other very interesting stat that came out of this polling, which is the following: only 28% of Democrats say they aren't stressed by talking with those who differ on Trump. So we bring this down to can we even as a nation have conversations about this stuff? Well, for Democrats, only a little over a quarter are capable of doing that.
Yeah, and the other way to say that is 72% of Democrats don't want to talk to Trump supporters, essentially, right?
Or it means that they're stressed about
Right.
it. Only 28% are not stressed by talking about Trump to people that differ on their beliefs with Trump.
Yeah. I mean, I just got done taking a Texas history class this summer, and there were a lot of leftists in my class. And, we tried to stay out of more, modern politics when we were talking, especially when we were talking more about just Texas history. But, politics and stuff comes up in conversation. And I think, I was probably one of only two more conservative people in the classroom. But even then, I could tell there was a difference once I brought up that I was, I told them I supported Trump. And you could tell there was a shift in tone. Not only towards the way they treated me, but towards the entire conversation as its own. Knowing, there's someone else in here that doesn't agree with us.
Means
And,
you're like a hateful bigot that, I don't know, they just can't trust even to be in the presence of someone who voted for a guy that won the presidency of the United States. Half this country voted for this guy. It's insane.
But
here's the thing, on the flip side for us, talking to someone that has a differing opinion on Donald Trump, that's most people we talk to.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't freak me out at all, especially as someone that, hosts a podcast on Donald Trump. I feel always ready to talk about this stuff. But then, it brings it to the grounds of, intellectual laziness. The left is just being lazy about not even being able to confront us about this stuff in any sort of argument, which, in the end is just their downfall. They're not learning anything from anything that's been happening.
And that does almost, that does put us, you and me, at a very unique position. We spend all week looking up information for this show, and we were doing that even before we started this podcast.
Yeah, essentially it was about the same. I mean, we weren't as fanatical about the news, but we were still just about as informed.
I mean, me personally, I kind of, I almost view the news religiously, in a way. And I've been doing that for years. This is the first time where I've really actually, been able to put it together every week, talk about it on the show. So, once we started this podcast, life didn't really change for you and me very much.
We just organized it
get together and record this and talk about it. But that being said, my viewpoints on things haven't really changed too much. And but the fact is, we're so obsessed with it. We actively seek information and knowledge every single day regarding politics, current events, all that sort of stuff. And for you and me, that puts us in a unique position where
we're in the upper echelon of Trump supporters as far as how informed they are. I think it goes without saying we can say that. But I think it does come from a place of fear on the flip side. Mm-hmm. There are Democrats, and hey, politics isn't the biggest thing in their life. They're definitely not always checking the news as often as us. To come up against someone like us in a conversation is very
it is,
anxiety inducing.
Especially if you just
I've witnessed this many times firsthand.
Especially if you drop 2 or 3 really big facts, like those manufacturing numbers. Drop stuff like that, boom, 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 right in a row. It almost freaks people out to a degree.
That you think stuff's...
They freeze.
Good.
And this is something that actually happens. You can see it if you try it on people. And so, and this is information that hardly anybody ever actually hears about, hardly anybody actually knows. I'm just kind of making this number off the top of my head, but I think it's probably accurate. Probably 90 to 95% of people are definitely not as informed as we are when it comes to this stuff. Even for Trump supporters, I would say that's still pretty accurate.
Yeah. Which I'm not trying to say from a place of egotist. It's
definitely not.
It's just this is how we running a weekly radio show.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Do you want to go into the next poll number we have?
Yes, I do.
So this was a very interesting one. This came out of Bloomberg, and so 90% of Americans do not say that global warming is one of the country's most pressing issues.
Yeah, and this was actually a poll that was of several different things that was done. It was asking Americans pretty much like, which of the following issues do you believe are the most important? And it was surprising. They said that, I'm trying to get the exact number here, but yeah, here it is. So it said that only 6% of people said that the U.S.'s relationship with Russia was a concern. Only
top concern.
Yes, was the top concern. Only 4% said taxes were the top concern. But 35% of people said healthcare was the top concern, which was by far the number one choice of the poll. And 13% said unemployment and jobs were a top concern. So, for all you hear about global warming being this huge topic, only 10% of Americans, only 1 in 10 people, view it as more important than everything else. Now, that's not necessarily saying that people don't think it's important, but that's not the top priority of the country right now.
Very few people see it as like a top priority.
If you add those other two numbers together, 48% would view healthcare, unemployment, and jobs, which I'm guessing taxes would probably go in there as well. Or I'm sorry, no, taxes was
separate.
Taxes was separate, but jobs, unemployment, and healthcare, that's 48% of people. That's almost half the country on those two things alone.
Interesting. I really thought that people would care more about climate change the way that they make it out to be, especially, as someone that lives in a college environment where that stuff's thrown at you all the time. But, yeah, some interesting numbers on that.
Yeah, and I have not been able to find a party breakdown for this poll, but being a Bloomberg poll, I'm guessing it was probably, it probably oversampled Democrats too much.
Similar sampling, yeah.
So most, if you notice, and this is, I don't want to get too off topic when I say this, but if you remember back in the election, there was like that ABC poll a few weeks before the election that had Hillary up by 12. Do you remember that poll?
It was a week before the election?
No, it's like 2 or 3 weeks before the election.
So prior to the FBI starting their investigation again.
But, if you notice...
I remember seeing numbers like that like a couple of months prior.
No, this was one that was like 3 weeks or so. Anyways, the point I'm trying to get to is that a lot of times these pollsters, they'll have these massive like D+7 to D+12 samples, and then as you get closer to an election, they'll start to get more accurate. Like I said, an accurate sample for this country is only about D+2 or D+3, meaning 3% more Democrats are polled than Republicans. But even then, if you think about it, just by having these big samples, you swing left in a lot of these polls. That's why people say that the Rasmussen poll is more accurate, because even though it's a D+ sample, it's like D+5 or D+6. But you can understand that having a D+6 in comparison to a D+12, that swings your entire poll by a good 6 to 12 points. And so that's the reason why they have Trump's approval rating right now at, I think it was like 48%, whereas others have it like 36 or 35%. Which, and then, leftists will use it and say, oh, look how unpopular, he's only got like a, 35% approval rating. And it's like, no, how would you use an accurate sampled poll? And you get to about 48%. And, like we've been saying in the show.
Which is why we generally don't care about these.
Yeah, that's why we've only, I think, covered one approval rating poll in the show the entire time we've been doing this. We're like, what?
Maybe a couple times.
Like, what, 19,
not often.
19 episodes in, and those things come out weekly.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways. This is just one of those things I just wanted to point out. We did a lot of polls this week.
Oh, no, yeah. But I think it paints an interesting picture to see so many polls like this.
Yeah. And let's go on to the last poll that we have here.
So this is a poll out of Rasmussen, which is very interesting. Americans have never felt better than they do presently, as long as they've been doing this poll. 74% of Americans consider their life to be either good or excellent. Now, this is up from 2010, where 61% describe themselves in such a light, and in 2014, 67% considered life to be good or excellent.
And that's compared to only 5% who rated their life as poor.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to bring politics into this too much, but I pretty much bet you that 5% is mostly Democrats, especially since
I don't know.
Especially since the inauguration. Well, which
still
is
3/4 of Americans saying that their life is
good
pretty
or excellent.
You know?
And they said most of those surveys said that most of those surveyed said that the first 40 years of life were the best, but it was unmarried adults who were more positive about their lives. So that's pretty interesting. That's unmarried adults who are happier.
You wouldn't really expect that, I don't think.
Yeah. But anyways, the thing that I kind of wanted to point out about this poll as well is, like we said, this is the highest level of satisfaction ever recorded by the pollster. Literally, like they said, Americans have never been more happy, which is in direct contrast to if you look at all the fear-mongering on the left, especially on Twitter. They make it seem like, everyone's life
gone
sucks.
To shit.
It's, everything's terrible, blah, blah, blah. But then you look in the actual poll that's showing, no, 3/4 of Americans are happy right now. They're very happy. They're good, or they rated it life as good or excellent. That would not be the case if
things were as doom as gloom.
If half the country, or slightly over half the country, thought that everything was going to hell in a handbasket. That would not be the case. So that's another indicator that like we said, these Trump approval rating polls are definitely not accurate. Like we said, this one came out of Rasmussen, which actually was the most accurate pollster of the election. Hillary won by, they say, she won by 3 million votes. No, she won by 2%, because you got to go by percentages. And they had her at winning by 2 points, which is exactly what happened. She won by 2 points. Every other pollster had it completely wrong. So, had her winning by 4 points, 6 points. Some had Trump winning by like 2 points. Which, even those had him winning were accurate, but had him winning the vote was, definitely incorrect. But that being said, Rasmussen is the most accurate for the election. I tend to believe that they are more accurate with the approval rating polls, so I also tend to believe that this poll as well is pretty darn accurate.
Yeah, I think it's just very interesting. I didn't know that so many people consider their lives pretty good. It's a very surprisingly high number to me. I don't know. Let's get into some stuff that aren't polls now before we get into current year college craziness. So the first thing that we want to talk about is this Israeli boycott legislation that they've been working on. Now, I believe this is in the Senate at the moment.
Yes.
And it has the backing of about 45 senators.
43 senators.
43?
14 Democrats and 29 Republicans.
So, essentially what this bill wants to do, originally they were saying you'd have a 20-year jail sentence if you support a ban on Israeli goods. Now I believe it's been changed to like a fine of like $250,000, which is still crazy.
It's a minimum fine of $250,000, a maximum fine of $1 million and 20 years behind bars.
But just for boycotting Israeli goods. Like, you're not doing anything, essentially. You're not purchasing, but the government still wants to, like, legislate down on you, not only for not buying a product, but not buying a foreign product.
Yeah, and, this is definitely a violation of the First Amendment.
Yeah, people are expressing themselves by not supporting Israel if they choose to do so.
Yeah, if this does get passed, it hasn't actually gotten passed yet, I don't think.
It should be unconstitutional.
But, yeah, this is definitely unconstitutional. It will not hold up in the courts. It will get struck down probably unanimously by every single court it goes through. There's no way. I don't support this. I think it's stupid. I think it's making the Senate look bad.
The scary thing is just how many people support doing such a thing.
Yeah, 43. That's slightly under half of the entire Senate.
And there was, some guys that are on our team that, I usually think better of. Like, Ted Cruz, I generally think is a okay senator. Ted Cruz supports this.
Marco Rubio supports it.
Marco Rubio supports this.
Now, you know who else supports it?
Chuck Schumer.
There you go.
Least favorite guy.
Yep.
So, yeah, definitely against that. This is something just kind of watch. It shouldn't pass, but it's very shocking that this is going on. Let's go into this stuff with DNC fundraising.
Okay, yeah, this is something that I specifically wanted to bring up here. I've actually got an infographic on my phone that I'm going to look at and read off of. So, if you look at the fundraising numbers between the RNC and the DNC for the month of June, it's really, really interesting. In the month of June, the Republican Party raised $13.5 million. They only spent $10.6 million.
So they're banking like $3 million.
So they made about $3 million that they added. They currently have $44.7 million cash on hand right now. You know how much debt the Republican Party has? Zero. Now let's compare that to the Democratic Party. In the month of June, they raised only $5.5 million. They spent $5.7 million. They only have $7.5 million cash on hand. They're $3.3 million in debt. So, if Trump's approval ratings were this bad, why is the Republican Party raising so much money? If the Democrats are so, on track to success, going to have this blue wave hit in 2018, where's the fundraising data?
Where's the numbers? How can we trust you, Democrats, with running this nation if you can't even run your own party without going into debt?
Yeah, and if you think about it, remember when we had those special elections in Georgia?
With John Ossoff, that was the big one that they dropped all the money with.
The Democrats dropped so much money on these races.
It didn't matter.
That's what you're saying is, you're not going to be able to spend $30 million in every single House race in 2018.
Not a House race of all things.
Yeah.
$30 million.
There's no way this is going to happen.
Karen Handel won it with $4 million.
Yeah, he outspent her, it was 17-1, I think it was the number?
Something astronomical.
And he still lost. And not only that, but, I just wanted to also point out, this is the Republican Party numbers. If you look at the Trump campaign numbers...
Also high.
$16 million he raised in June. That's more than the Republican Party alone. And that on top of, I keep bringing this up every week, if you look at, just the party registration for every single swing state, with the exception of Virginia and Colorado, the Republicans have been doing better than Democrats, whether expanding their own lead or cutting into the Democrat lead in those states. So you take that, plus purging of the voter rolls, plus Republican Party is outraising Democrats by a large margin, plus the fact that Democrats aren't bringing in any money, plus the fact that they keep losing, plus the fact that they have no message, plus the fact that,
this is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it's a complete recipe for disaster, especially in 2018. There is a good chance that Republicans might actually take a supermajority in the Senate. Now, I don't trust the Republicans to actually get anything done. I would think they would have gotten something done in healthcare. I hope they get something done in taxes like we were talking about earlier. But even then, I don't really trust the Republican Party, but, I definitely don't trust the Democrat Party either. So I don't see how anyone can actually think that the Democrats are set for success, especially in 2018. It's not going to happen. There's no indication of that happening. Something drastic would have to change, and it doesn't look like anything is going to.
Most definitely. But just some really staggering numbers that show you just how in the middle of nowhere the Democratic Party is at the moment.
Yeah.
They have no message. The polling, shows people don't think they have a message. They can't raise any money. They can't win an election to save their lives.
They don't even want to engage with people on the other side.
They can't even engage with people on the other side. They can't even have friends that vote for Trump. But, I'm supposed to think that they have a chance at some sort of blue wall sweeping over us in 2018. No, I think we're going to get some seats.
Yeah.
Definitely. Especially with the Senate, we don't have many Republicans being contested. That's...
there's 33 Senate seats.
It's only 5 Republicans.
I think it's 8. I think it's 23 and 8 or...
It's a low number.
Yeah, it's 23 and 8 because the 2 independents are both up for re-election. So 23 and 8 is 31 plus the 2 is 33. Now, remember, like we've been saying, 10 of those Democrat seats are in states that Trump won. 10 of them.
So your state has moved right on you.
Yeah. So if you think about it, those 8 seats, I don't think hardly any of those 8 seats are going to be contentious at all. Even in we have 52 seats right now, so we'd only need to win 8 more. Even if we only won 5 or 6, we'd have a 57-seat majority in the Senate. You can, even with having a couple of senators like McCain and Graham who don't exactly vote party line with you all the time, you add a couple more seats, those 2 won't matter. You can pass everything you want. It won't matter.
Which, if you're a Democratic senator going into 2018 for your re-election, and you're in one of these states that voted for Donald Trump, what do you have to show for your entire time of the Trump administration?
Yeah.
I can't think of a single senator, as far as the Democrats have gone, that has actually done something of significance. Other than, like, Chuck Schumer says stuff that I don't like. But I can't think of anything.
Nothing.
What are you even running on in 2018? Just, we don't like Trump. We'll try to sign legislation on stuff that will never happen. I don't know. But let's get to the next story here about what the House wants to do. Okay, so in the House, they're looking to vote on some new Russian sanctions. You have some specifics on that, Bobby?
I do. The House is slated to vote Tuesday on bipartisan legislation to limit the Trump administration's ability to lift sanctions on Russia. The White House had urged lawmakers to water down the provisions limiting its ability to lift sanctions, but legislation is expected to head to President Trump's desk within the required changes. A procedural hang-up had stalled the legislation in the House for weeks after the Senate passed it by a vote of 98-2 last month, but negotiations reached a deal that was unveiled on Saturday. So pretty much what's happening is the House doesn't want Trump to be able to lift sanctions on Russia.
Yes.
And it looks like they're going to vote that way. It passed overwhelmingly in the Senate bipartisanly. So
now he can strike this down, but I don't know if he will. But I obviously don't want Russian sanctions being passed right when we're trying to negotiate with Russia on so many things. We're trying to improve, the relations with Russia right now. That was the whole G20 meeting that Vladimir Putin had with Trump. That was the whole point. And look at what they were able to achieve immediately. They got a ceasefire in southwestern Syria. We're pretty much ending the war in Syria, which we also have some more stuff we're going to get into later, which pertains to that actually.
Now,
but just like, we're trying to fix this stuff, but at the same time, the politicians are pushing through more anti-Russian sanctions. How is Vladimir Putin supposed to respond to this?
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily that they are pushing through more sanctions. They are making it harder for the administration to lift current ones. So I have seen a lot of people saying that this is putting more sanctions on Russia. No, that's not the purpose. The purpose is to make sure...
Okay, so I'm wrong.
The purpose is to make sure that existing sanctions are a lot harder to take away. Or
still, yeah, this is a...
But,
this is still an anti-Russian legislation.
Yes.
Though. So it's just like, why now of all times to do this? This boogeyman of Russia will never go away. It is so irritating. Literally the worst.
Yeah, and I have a bad feeling it probably will pass the House. I don't think Trump is going to sign that into law, obviously. Who knows if
fit in line with what he wants to do.
I mean, it passed the Senate 98-2. They'll probably override veto that.
98-2.
But yeah, so it's just stupid all in general.
So let's go into this statement from Shumer, which is kind of interesting because I love Chuck Schumer in like a love-hate way. And then we'll get into the Maxine Waters and we'll go to current year college craziness. So Chuck Schumer has made a statement this week, which is actually kind of interesting. Shows a little self-reflection, I guess. He says that the Democrats, not Russia, were to blame for their loss in the election. Do you have the specifics on that, Bobby?
I have the exact quote he told. So he was talking to the Washington Post, and he said, "When you lose to somebody who has a 40% popularity, you don't blame other things like Comey in Russia. You blame yourself." And then he went on to say, "So what did we do wrong? People didn't know what we stood for, just that we were against Trump, and still believe that." So, he's pretty much saying exactly what we're saying.
So he sees this.
He even sees that the Democratic Party doesn't really have a message. All they are is the anti-Trump party. And that's not going to win you elections. In fact, that's losing the Democrats' elections.
Yeah, they've lost every single special election so far.
I mean, I hate Chuck Schumer. I think he's a terrible person. But that being said, even he sees the writing on the wall here.
Yeah. So that kind of sums up a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about in this bottom of the stack news stuff we've been talking about with all these polls. It just all points in one direction, and that's that the Democrats are in absolute free fall.
Now, there is one last slimmer of hope the Democrats have.
I wouldn't call it hope, but...
It's hope for us.
It is hope for us.
It is hope for us.
It is a funny joke for us.
You want me to say it?
Yeah.
Maxine Waters says, "I will run for president if millennials want me to."
Maxine Waters, the California representative, known for being extremely stupid and saying really dumb stuff. What are some, like, classic Maxine Waters moments?
When she said 700 billion people will lose health insurance.
That was a good one. That was a really good one.
I mean, it seems like we have a Maxine Waters.
Almost every
We
single
should
week.
start having a Maxine Waters moment on our show. A segment. It's everything dedicated to Maxine Waters. I mean, she's by far the dumbest person in the Senate.
Literally the stupidest person in the House of Representatives.
You know, but that being said, she says if millennials want me to do it, I'll do it. I want her to do it. I want her to run for president as the Democratic nominee. I will donate to her campaign. I'm saying this right. I will donate to her campaign. I'll donate like $5 and then leave it at that, just so I can say donate. Like, I want to see her.
Now, this is actually interesting to talk about. We can be a little divergent for a second.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, okay, 2020, the Democrats need a new nominee. Do you think Maxine Waters will be in the pool of people that will be running?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think
she's actually going to do it.
Which is why she's just running her mouth stupid like always.
Yeah. But, I mean, if you want to think, who do the Democrats have to run?
Elizabeth Warren,
maybe.
Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders. No,
They'll be ancient, but
I tend
try.
not to think that Bernie Sanders is going to run again.
Now, he has not taken off the table.
No.
But that's a little too far in the future for him.
So you got maybe Elizabeth Warren, maybe Cory Booker. I know
Kamala Harris.
It seems like Kamala Harris is being groomed for the seat right now.
They're pushing her hard for it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really think that she has what it takes to encapsulate the heart and, passion of America to lead her to victory over big, evil, bad Donald Trump. Because, hey, you can run your candidate at us, but you still don't have a message.
Yeah.
Think about it for a second. Stuff is looking pretty goddamn up as far as the economy's going, as far as immigration's going. Imagine how good it's going to be by 2020. What are they going to run on when, like, Trump has run a successful presidency so far? I can't think of anything. Yeah. I feel very secure in 2020.
I do. And, if you look at just, like, the data, the statistics of, how those things are going, we only lost New Hampshire by 2,600 votes. Minnesota, which is a state that, when was the last time a Republican won that? Like Nixon?
Oh, I have no idea.
We only lost Minnesota by 2.5 points. Closest it's been in,
which is a very liberal
decades.
state.
Yeah, very liberal state.
I lived in Minnesota for like a year.
Yeah. And, we talked a while back about how when Trump he didn't put the sanctions, but he changed Obama's policy towards Cuba. The Cuban Americans in Florida loved it. You helped secure Florida. All these jobs that are coming back to the Rust Belt states. We won Ohio by 9 points.
Obama won that big league.
Obama won that twice, and people even were predicting Hillary to win Ohio. We won it by 9 points. Pennsylvania, like I said, I was looking at the data for the party registration. Like, what did we win Pennsylvania by? Like 50,000 votes or something like that?
Close.
They said that since the election, the Republicans have done better than the Democrats in terms of party registration in Pennsylvania by 57,000. So, like, if the election were held today just by party registration alone, we would win by double the margin. And the same goes for states like Wisconsin. The same goes for states like Michigan.
Those states are all going much more right.
Like, instead of being swing states, I would actually start to say that, especially a state like Ohio,
like light red.
North Carolina, I would put them from the swing state toss-up category to the lean Republican category. Yeah. All the red states that are already red, they're going to be safe Republican. You don't have to worry about those. Some states I feel like are too far gone. Like, Colorado, I thought we had chances in Colorado. I don't see us winning Colorado in 2020. Even though I had us losing Virginia, I still don't have us losing Virginia, or I still have us losing Virginia again.
Virginia's a hard one to win.
Yeah, but
especially with all those places near DC, it's super liberal.
Yeah, but a state like New Hampshire, I think we'll get New Hampshire.
I believe so as well.
I think we'll hold on to Michigan. I think we'll hold on to Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania. I think there's a good chance if you play your cards right, you could go for Minnesota, especially with the fact that their Somali immigrant population's been causing a lot of trouble, especially this last week. I know we didn't actually have any articles about that, but that police officer who was a Somali immigrant shot and killed that Australian woman. Like, that's generating a lot of outrage. People are asking questions. And, there's also the problem, I think it was with measles, has had this outbreak in the Minneapolis area. And it's almost entirely due to that Somali immigrant population. And so just average, regular, everyday Minnesota people are starting to realize that, this might not be such a good deal for us. This isn't working out. If Trump runs on his message of saying, we're going to, clean this up, there's a good chance people might actually vote for him. Especially if, as we said, people's lives are improving. The economy is doing great. And the Democrats don't have any message. Trump has something to run on in 2020. 2016 was him saying, here's what I want to do. 2020 is going to say, here's what I've done. And so I do think that, we're looking good for 2020, and there's a possibility that, when we win, it'll be in a bigger margin than it was beforehand.
Yeah, most definitely. Let's head into current year college craziness now.
The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic. You're fucking a white male!
The assumption that women are naturally better caregivers is part of patriarchy.
Die, cis, scum.
You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us!
It's time for some current year college craziness.
Current year college craziness, the segment that keeps on giving, the segment of the show where we talk about all the crazy stuff that's happening across college campuses, since we have the unique perspective of college students to kind of give analysis to this stuff. So the first story that we have is out of Purdue. Purdue handed out privileged scorecards to students. Now, this kind of brings me back to what we were doing on the Hillary Planet podcast, where, the fake news podcast we were doing, we checked our privilege. And we made up, much higher numbers than it would have. But, here, Purdue is handing out these cards where, you're going to calculate your privilege. Now, there's some interesting stuff with it. If you are white, you want to have low numbers.
Right.
So if you're white, you get 25 points, and if you're Asian, you get 10 points. While if you're Hispanic or black, you lose points. Now, if you're a woman, you automatically lose 50 points. But if you are a cisgendered woman, you gain back 20 points. Now, if you are gay, you drop 100 points. Because apparently that's really life-altering, I guess, in this day and age. But, so they went through all this stuff, and if you were a gay, intersex, trans, black, Middle Eastern, Muslim, homeless, blind, short, ugly scientist who cannot add and is filling the form out on a Friday night, because there was some weird arbitrary things they'd thrown, so Friday night, I guess, you would have minus 2,570 points, which would make you the biggest winner. What are some of the thoughts on this, Bobby?
I kind of want to get one of these and actually fill it out again.
We'd probably get some high numbers.
I'd probably be pretty high. There's also other things, for instance, Muslims lose 50 points automatically. Jews gain 25 points. Christians only gain 5 points, though. So it's
Jews gain a lot more points than Christians.
I guess they're more privileged than we are. I didn't know that. But, yeah, so that's pretty interesting. And I want to see if we can find one of these and fill it out. That would be really, really fun.
Yeah, I think it's pretty messed up that the school's doing this, because it's, really stupid and, not scientific at all.
Not only that, not only they're handing them out, but they're actually selling them for $5 a piece.
Selling them?
They're selling them, so now you have to pay to find out what your privilege is.
Or you could go check BuzzFeed.
Yeah, BuzzFeed's more accurate. It's real
BuzzFeed
news.
is more accurate. Not that I endorse BuzzFeed. Let's get into the next story that we have here. This one, oh god.
I remember hearing about this.
Okay, so there's a college chancellor. I don't believe he was saying this in terms of college so much.
No,
I
he
think he was
was
just talking about education in general, right?
Yeah, he was.
He said that requiring students to take algebra is a civil rights issue.
Oh god.
Do you wanna go into detail for us, Bobby?
Yes, the dude's name is Eloy Ortiz Oakley. He is the chancellor of the California Community Colleges system, and he had an interview with National Public Radio where he called the requirement to take algebra in order to get a degree or graduate is a civil rights issue. He also said that he wants to get rid of the requirement for any community college student who isn't a STEM major or focusing their studies in the areas of science, technology, engineering, and math, or, STEM. So pretty much what he's wanting to do is, take intermediate algebra. Like, this is something that most people learn in high school. This is basic algebra. He wants that requirement gone for anyone who's not a STEM major.
The main reason he's pushing this as a civil rights issue is because blacks and Hispanics don't do as well as whites.
Right.
They
They tend to do worse than whites and Asians in that particular field. And so, yeah, the entire reason he wants to do that, is, as you said, is because they'd have disproportionately lower scores than that, and that's keeping them from graduating. So by doing that, it not only raises their likelihood of graduating, it raises their GPA as well.
Math is like one of those few things in school that I think is absolutely necessary. I do not, follow a career path where I need to use math, like, at all. And I only took one math class in college, my very first semester of college. I took college algebra, and I was done. And I'm not good at math at all. But, I just tried a little bit, and I got a B. And, it wasn't hard.
Yeah.
At all. So, the idea that, not only is it, it's not doable to pass one of these classes, but it's a civil rights issue. It's absurd. Civil rights, trying to get equal votes for black people. This is supposed to be on the same grounds as civil rights, where we can just we don't have to teach these kids algebra because they're going to fail anyways. So let's just not educate them. What is the point of education at this point? It doesn't make sense.
You know what they call it? They call it content inequality.
Why?
That's the phrase.
Why do they call it that, though?
It's content inequality, because the content is being taught to you unequally, because some people are better than others at some things. Therefore, the content is unequal. It leads to performance gaps between the privileged and underprivileged students. That's part of the reason why they want to get rid of it.
God,
so,
privileged?
Yeah.
You don't need privilege to do well in school. You just need to be smart or try hard.
And like you said, when you had to take your college algebra course here, it was one course, that's the only math class you ever had to take.
Yes.
And you did all right with it. And you didn't really try very hard, did you?
No.
Yeah, so there you go. That's all you need to know about that.
Super dumb.
I mean, if you're in college, you should be trying hard in every class to begin with.
I wasn't doing that for most of my college career. But I'm a smart guy. I did well.
Yeah. So let's get to the next story.
Yes. So, what university is this at?
This was at Washington State University.
So, Washington State University is paying students $11 an hour to advocate for social justice and diversity. Do you want to go into that for us, Bob?
Yes. So, Washington State University is paying students who know, quote, how power, privilege, and oppression operates. They're paying them $11 an hour to, quote, promote equity and equality and advance social justice. They said candidates are expected to know how poor, privileged oppression operates so that they can help organize programs like, quote, we're a culture, not a costume. Halloween costume social justice teach-in. So this is going to be like how we had that tunnel of oppression. It'd be something like that, like we had at our school, but like bigger and better and all over the place. And they're getting paid $11 an hour to do it.
To like teach you about stuff that is bullshit.
Yeah, it's the, quote, Social Justice Peer Educators Program, which was established back in August of 2014. It asked participants, they're tasked with developing and implementing educational programs and trainings for their undergraduate peers which advance equity, diversity, and social justice. And they said it's a, according to the job description on their diversity education website, a basic qualification for the social justice peer educator job is to have an interest in learning more about diversity and how to advance social justice and familiarity with how power, privilege, and oppression operates. But a preferred candidate, meanwhile, is expected to have experience building and implementing educational programs, and particularly programs that address structural inequality. So pretty much if you're a leftist SJW, you've got a job.
It is a job for you. Now they say that the candidates need to know how power, privilege, oppression operates. But like, you read me all this stuff and like the qualifications and whatnot, and it just seems really privileged that anyone could be making any money off of like these cultural Marxist conspiracy theories and like spewing this propaganda. Literally spewing this vilest propaganda out at $11 an hour. That's absurd.
Yeah, they're also having workshops called, quote, I Got Your Back, Redefining Masculinity, Social Justice Teach-In, and Microaggressions 101. So you can learn all about your microaggressions while from someone making $11 an hour.
Yeah, probably have to set up a space base and manage it as well.
Well, I'm glad that I don't live in Washington because I don't want my tax money going to that.
I don't know why, but this like story really bummed me out.
Yeah,
I
kind of get the same thing from
exists. Really sad. Let's go into the last story that we want to talk about.
Yeah, current year college craziness. It's the middle of the summer. There's less stories than usual, but that's okay. Shorter episode.
Evergreen still happened this summer.
Yeah.
Which is what we're talking about. So if you do not know, Evergreen State College is a college where they wanted to organize this like day without whites, and like one teacher decided to like stand up to it. I forget what his name was. Whatever. And like the entire university, all the leftist kids, they just freak out. And they start yelling at him, and they like took over parts of the campus, and they took over the police station. They made all these crazy demands. They started having roaming bands of bat-wielding leftists monitoring the campus, doing quote-unquote community policing.
They held teachers hostage.
Yes, they did. They did a lot of bad stuff. But what specifically are we talking about now?
Well, this next story is... it's a story that a girl that was there, a white girl, a white student, was there, and she just now came out with her story, which actually happened a couple of months ago. Her name is Mackenzie Kiger, and she said that she was silenced for being white. Now, she claims that classmates refused to let her voice her opinions in a meeting with administrators earlier this year because she was white. She says that she was rebuffed several times, and when she tried to express her views on the protests that shook the campus this spring, she was even told to stand silently in the back after classmates reluctantly let her join one meeting. Now, I read this article earlier, and it said that there was a meeting of the school's board of trustees, and she was trying to go to that meeting. It was being held at the 4th floor of their library there. And when she got off the elevator, the other students literally would not let her go anywhere. They wouldn't let her get off the elevator because she was white. And eventually, she was able to make her way into the meeting, but even then, she was told to stand in the back and not say anything. Like, all she could do was just observe and not participate.
These colleges, if you are a white individual on a college campus, like, yeah, the university is often against you. And this is a situation here at Evergreen College where, like, yeah, everyone's out to get her because she's white. And, why would they silence her opinion purely because of her identity? Like, that's not an argument. I don't know.
But, you know, I just tend to get this feeling that the crazier and the more stuff like this happens, the more the left does to divide even amongst themselves, especially on
this woman
the topic
is
of
a
race.
leftist.
Yeah, she's a leftist. There's a quote here. She says, "I'm all for social justice. I just don't think what people at Evergreen are asking for is social justice. Focusing on the color of someone's skin or treating them differently based on their skin color, which is what they're asking for, to me, that is racism." So, you know, even she understands, like, these people are being racist towards me because I'm white. And I just tend to get this feeling that the more this happens, the more white leftists, especially ones who are more towards the center, are going to be driven towards the right, you know, on this type of topics.
And she said that she tried to reach out to the administrators at the college, but she was just completely ignored.
Yeah.
So they don't care.
So, yeah, they don't care. And she knows they don't care. And she knows that her side is being completely racist simply because she is white. Tell me, what is she going to do when this continues for the next 2 or 3 years? Is she going to continue to advocate for social justice reforms? Or is she going to say, no, you people are crazy, I'm going to go my own way?
Probably the second.
And that's what I tend to feel like is happening, especially in college campuses, with more, you know, younger people on the right starting to rise up in power.
I think if you're one of these people that, you know, receives the targeting of the college system with their ideology of this cultural Marxist stuff, you know, particularly if you're white, like, I wasn't a very political person when I came to college, but I was around all this, like, really blatant anti-white stuff, and I was around all of these weird concepts they're pushing, and that not only made me political, it pushed me right, like, dramatically right.
Yeah.
I, at one point in my life, like, considered myself, like, a liberal. So, these colleges, they do something to you.
Not only that, but she said that she even felt about withdrawing from the school entirely. She said, "I sent an email to the admissions because I wanted to transfer, and I was telling them how upset I was with what's happening and why I wanted to transfer, hoping they would somewhat be concerned that I was leaving because of this. And instead they were just like, well, we'll send you your money," because she'd paid her tuition. So, like, you know, not only did they pretty much not care what she had to say, once they finally reached back to her, they still didn't care. They didn't care that she was leaving. They're like, okay, fine, leave, whatever. You know, if you want to leave because of this, that's fine, okay, sure. But yeah, like, this college, every week, we seem like we have something about it. It's just crazy.
Evergreen College is a crazy place. But, yeah, that was the final story for current year college craziness. Why don't we take the break now? We'll come back with the international news and we'll get out of here.
All right, let's do it.
Hey, Patriots and Warriors, this is Bass Stickman, and you are listening to Trump Republic Radio.
We were minding our own business, trying to celebrate the free speech that you think is so important, and you came to our rally and you chanted, "You're fags. Go home. You have low testosterone."
And he's been on many very prominent right-wing shows talking about his cause, and that would be Simon Roach of the Sadelanders.
Hello Enzo, hello Robert, thank you very much for having me. Let me say this, it has been my privilege. You won't see it from my perspective, so I'm not going to, it's pointless me trying to persuade you, but you will, let me just tell you I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I appreciate it very much. And if you'd like me to come on again at any time, hopefully there will be fewer difficulties and challenges, and I won't mess you around as I have done this time, for which I'm very sorry. But I would love to come on again. Anytime you ask, I'll be there.
Please call China and tell them we are all counting on China. Tell the president we became friends for 2 days, that he was great.
You really have to walk me through this here, because I am not familiar with so much of the terminology. Like, for instance, can you shed some light on what is a cuck?
A cuck.
How much money will you make today banging that drum for Soros? Soros must pay you good money to bang that drum. play ping pong?
Hey, welcome back from the break. We're going to go through international news and we're going to get out of here. We got some stuff here with Europe, some stuff in the Americas, Asia, and the Middle East. So quite a bit of stuff to go through. So the first thing that we want to talk about is out of Italy. Now, Italy has been the location for migrants crossing the Mediterranean to stop almost 85% of those who have crossed the Mediterranean Sea this year so far, as economic migrants have landed in Italy. And Italy is cracking under the pressure that they're receiving.
Yeah.
We had the story a couple of weeks ago where the mayor of Rome said, we cannot handle this at all. We can't have any more migrants coming in. There's some numbers in Italy. They have around 200,000 migrants alone who are in detention centers.
Jeez.
So they have to pay for all these people. And Italy has very high unemployment rate. It has a huge debt problem. Not doing well off, and they're getting flooded with these migrants. So Italy is potentially looking to use what they dub the nuclear option, which would allow them to give temporary visas to the migrants that have just entered Italy, and then they can roam free to go to other nations in the European Union. Now, how it currently stands is if you are a refugee or migrant, I mean, they're interchangeable as words, you have to register in the first country you land in, and you have to stay there. But in this case, if the Italian government was to do the option that they're considering, they are going to send a flood of thousands of migrants north. Now, the Austrian government has already put troops on the border, and they will have said that if Italy does this, they are going to deploy even more to stop this. So, I don't know what happens. Do they flood into Switzerland, or are they still going to go to Austria? Where are they going to go? I don't know. But, Italy cannot handle the amount of migrants they have at the moment, and they're at a pushing point to where they might just unleash this on the rest of the European Union to deal with. They just can't help themselves at this point.
I mean, Italy is pretty much, or I'm sorry, not Italy, but just Europe in general, it's pretty much just being, screwed over by this entire system. But in a way, as bad as that is, I almost don't blame Italy because, they're being overrun by migrants. They don't want them there, and they're looking for any way to get them out.
Yeah.
And for them, that is a solution. Problem is, like you said, that then brings those migrants to go to all the other countries in Europe. And the other countries are starting to not want them either.
Now, Italy did a similar thing after the Yugoslav wars where they were taking in dispossessed people, and they were able to, do these temporary visas to accommodate them so they could travel. But, that was at least helping out people that lived in Europe.
Yeah, I was going to say that's another European country.
These are just people crossing the sea from Africa, and Italy might just give them a free pass to go anywhere, which means that they're going to go to Germany or Sweden. So,
yeah, and
those countries don't need any more migrants.
No, they don't, especially Germany and especially Sweden. But like you said, 85% of the migrants that have crossed the Mediterranean Sea so far in 2017 have gone to Italy. There have been 101,000 have crossed in total this year.
There's been weeks where... No, there's been days this year so far in Italy where, most of them they land in Sicily. Like 2,000 or 3,000 migrants just show up. Just out of nowhere on the beach.
There was a period, I believe it was a couple of weeks ago, where we said they had 20,000 in 1 week showed up in Italy alone.
How do you maintain this?
You cannot.
No. Even 20,000 doesn't seem like an astronomical number, but think of all that you need to provide for them, because as we've said many times on the show before, these people do not get jobs.
Mm-mm.
What were the numbers last week about jobs? I think it was in Germany.
In Germany, the number was...
It was 1/3%?
In Germany, it was 1/3 of the percent have actually gotten jobs, and I believe it was 90% are looking at long-term unemployment of over 10 years.
So these people are criminally, needing of the state to give them, and it's not even their state. It's insane. I don't know. It's crazy. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
We want to go into some Poland stuff now.
I do.
You want to talk about this especially?
Yes. So, in the wake of President Trump visiting Poland, and Poland, kind of butting up with or butting against the EU in not wanting to take any migrants, Poland is purging its courts of all pro-EU communists that they have there. They said that they've started an increased government control over the news media. They've cracked down on public gatherings, and they've also restricted the activities of some non-governmental organizations. And this is all simply because of the EU trying to possibly put sanctions or other hardships on Poland for not taking in migrants. But then Poland has gone so far as they've also started to remove a lot of pro-EU judges from different courts around the country. Now, there have been widespread protests around the country because of this, even from people who tend to be more, right-wing in Poland.
Poland's like one of the most right-wing nations in the world, just for reference.
Yeah, so even a lot of people in the right-wing are, they're concerned about some of the steps that Poland has taken. However, I think just on its face alone, the fact that they are trying to get rid of pro-EU people in their own government tends to be more of a good thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely not pro-communists at all. So.
Yeah. But that's something I more just wanted to mention, not really go into too much detail about it. So
yeah.
Let's move on to the next thing.
So the next thing that we want to talk about, the Berlin Interior Ministry made some statements this week. It was on Tuesday, which... pretty shocking stuff. They are warning of the possibility of leftist assassination plots. Do you want to read some of the quotes and stuff, Bobby?
Yes. So, for years, far-left activists in Berlin followed the strategy of attacking property, not people. But that is changing, the Berlin Interior Ministry claimed Tuesday. They said 2016 was marked out by a spiral in left-wing violence that not only led to a multitude of serious crimes, but also in part to a radicalized tone, which has seen calls for the murder of police officers and politicians, the ministry warned in its security report for 2016. They said the inhibition threshold regarding physical attacks is sinking, and we are now at the stage where targeted assassination of political opponents no longer appears completely unrealistic. So pretty much Berlin is saying that leftists are becoming more violent, and there's a good possibility that they might start actually assassinating public figures.
In the same sense as, we have Antifa in the United States, Antifa existed in Germany prior to the United States ever having any. But now these radical leftist, communist, anarchists, whatever, they're so violent that the government has to warn about the possibility of them assassinating people. Mm-hmm. Which, you look at how the G20 went with the protests there. The leftist protesters burned down that city, essentially. It's crazy how out of control the politics in Germany has gotten. If you are right-wing at all in Germany, the Antifa is going to be at your door. Yep. If it's not the government officials themselves knocking on your door. Which, a couple weeks back, they had those quote-unquote hate crime raids that they're doing all across Germany, where they're going to people's houses and arresting them for posting stuff on the internet. Insane, crazy, crazy place Germany is.
Now, what's interesting is they said that even though the number of people that they consider to be quote-unquote far-right extremists is more people in Germany than they consider to be left-wing extremists.
Which is probably not correct.
Yeah, definitely not correct. But that being said, they said crimes committed by people on the far right actually dropped last year, whereas crimes committed by people on the far left skyrocketed. So that's why there's such this big concern for this as well.
Crazy stuff. Do you want to go into the next story that we have?
Yeah, and this kind of goes with the next two stories actually kind of go together. So I'll just mention this first one before we go to the second one. So in Germany, there's these two girls who were interviewed by one of the stations there called Newsbeat, or it might have been a British station. But anyways, it was talking about people there. And they said that these two girls said that they regularly get assaulted, and they say it's now just quote-unquote part of the night. She says, I've had my boobs grabbed, I've had my butt grabbed, I've had people put their hands up my skirt and down my top. And she said, getting groped is just part of a normal night out. And it's all because of the migrants at this point. And actually, I was mistaken. This is actually in England, not Germany, but
Oosh.
But still.
The next one's in Germany.
Yeah, one of the girls was 18.
Although this happens all across the European continent.
So it all, like I said, it kind of comes together. But she was 18, and her older sister was 20, and she says that they have to deal with groping in clubs. She says, I've had one guy come up to me in a totally inappropriate situation and grab my boobs, and then he was just holding them. I was shocked and I didn't know how to react. His friend laughed and he said, he's just drunk, never mind him. And she says, unfortunately, you've got to be prepared, and that's the way it is. I feel a bit like prey. There are a lot of predators around who will just grab you. And they said that the figures, which were provided by police, show that the vast majority of the victims were female, obviously. But they said campaigners are warning that the number is probably much higher, as many of the assaults don't even get reported. And that's kind of the whole point of this article, is to say that it's becoming so commonplace
with these migrants,
migrants sexually assaulting girls and women in nightclubs that they're not even reporting them to the police anymore. They just consider that part of, if you figure, oh well, we're gonna go out to the club tonight. They figure, yeah, I know I'm gonna get groped by these people, and I'm okay with that.
You also have to keep in mind that a lot of people are afraid to report these things because they don't want to be called a racist.
Correct.
That is also a thing. You look at the grooming gangs out of Rotherham, where hundreds of English girls were being, taken into Pakistani grooming gangs where they're sold as, sexual slaves, pretty much. Prostitutes.
Yeah.
A lot of people knew about this stuff, but the police were afraid to do anything because they're afraid of being called a racist. And this was something that went on for like 20 years in the city of Rotherham, and they haven't changed anything since. They haven't stopped it. Just everyone is super afraid to say anything in the United Kingdom, especially. But because you just can't criticize people that are Muslim at all in the United Kingdom. It's like one of the biggest no-nos, migrants included. So
yeah.
So the last story that we have as far as Europe goes is back to Germany. We have some statements from an individual named Robert Siegmüller, who is the chairman of the Association of German Administrative Law Judges. And he is talking about the situation of the German courts trying to maintain all the asylum seekers. And he's saying that everything is on the verge of collapse. Let me read some quotes from him. The situation is dramatic for administrative courts. We are now completely stretched to our limit. The administrative court system cannot endure such a figure in the long run. The figure is their current total amount of asylum seekers in the courts, which is about 250,000. At this point, everything will collapse. Things may go well for a while, but not permanently. The justice system is indeed determined to bulk itself up, but it is ever more difficult to find the desperately needed personnel. So, what we can just see here is Germany is taking all these asylum seekers, and there are so many that want asylum to Germany. The courts can't even keep up with this. There are more asylum seekers than people that can take the courts take the cases to represent them. This is an unsustainable model, but it's not like immigration is going to go down in Germany at all. Not at all. So it's insane. The country's in clown world. It's not a serious country. But yeah, as far as Europe, I think that's all we have.
I think so. It's we cover this stuff every single week about what's happening in Europe, and God, I'm so happy that stuff's not happening here, I'll tell you that.
Oh, yeah, I'm so thankful I don't live in Europe.
Like, as bad as things are here, like, I can imagine how bad it is over there.
Not at all. I wouldn't want to know it at all. Let's go over to the Americas. So the first story we want to talk about is out of Mexico, and it is that Mexico has overtaken the United States as the fattest country in the world. Do you have the specifics on that, Bobby?
I do. It says that modern lifestyles of Mexican citizens, including rising incomes and consumption vices, have fed a seemingly endless struggle that's killing thousands more each year. They said that even as nearly as half of its people are poor, and officials are launching a national anti-hunger campaign, Mexico, by some accounts, recently has replaced the United States as the chubbiest of the globe's larger countries. They said that diabetes and other cardiovascular diseases have spiked. They said that plus sizes of clothing are becoming more popular being sold as people keep eating and eating and eating. And so they said that about 70% of Mexican adults are overweight. A third of them are considered obese. Childhood obesity has tripled in the last decade, and about a third of teenagers are fat as well. Experts say that 4 of every 5 of those heavy kids will remain so their entire lives. So, yeah, that's just something to point out.
Not the fattest country in the world anymore.
Nope.
Those numbers out of Mexico are terrible. 70% of adults.
Yeah. They said that Mexico has a 32.8% adult obesity rate. Even though, that seems like that's kind of a contradictory to... Well, it's not, because obesity is different than being overweight.
Yeah, it's excessively
overweight. I mean, a lot of people are overweight, but not necessarily obese.
Yeah.
That being said, they have a 32.8% adult obesity rate, whereas America is 31.8%. And, a lot of that has to do with the fact that we have, industrialized agriculture and food, more access to food, lots of different types of food. The food itself is unhealthy. That sort of stuff. We can go on and on and on talking about health. But, yeah, so Mexico overtook us.
Yeah, interesting. Came out of nowhere for me.
Yeah.
I didn't know Mexico had such problems. So the other story that we wanted to talk about in the Americas was a quick look at Venezuela.
What is Venezuela?
Funny inside joke. But, so Bloomberg this week posted some numbers on the exchange rates for the Venezuelan currency, which is the bolivar. And I just want to go over these numbers so you can get an understanding of how crazy everything is right there at the moment. So in 2010, it was about 8.38 bolivars to a dollar. In 2011, it was 8.27. In 2012, it was 9.42 to a dollar. Nothing crazy there. Nothing crazy really happening. 2013, it jumps up to 31.62 bolivars per dollar. Pretty big upswing. 2014, it jumped up to 77.33 bolivars to a dollar. Pretty high, but this is definitely not the highest. So 2015, the number jumped up to 677.85 bolivars to an American dollar. 2016, that number jumped up to 1,005.74 bolivars to the American dollar. And where we are at today in 2017, it is 8,790.84 bolivars to an American dollar. That's full swing hyperinflation, Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe level stuff. The money's worthless.
I mean, that's an 8 times rate in a single year. 1,000 times rate in 7 years. Compared to the U.S. dollar, that's just absolutely incredible, especially when you look at the graph that they have provided in this Bloomberg article.
So it just goes to show, we can't truly comprehend how bad it is there, but you take your money to some place, you might have your entire life savings in bolivars, and it could be worthless now.
Yeah.
Completely worthless. I believe it's something like 90% of Venezuelans at the moment do not receive enough food to, sustain themselves.
I mean, didn't they say that the average adult's lost like 16 pounds in the last couple of years since the food shortage started?
Something like that.
And I remember, we were talking about this back even in like the middle of March or early March when they're saying that they are having to kill animals in the zoo just to eat food.
Yeah.
And that's something that I bring up to people, and they never hear that stuff before. And that's a story that's now, 4 months old. And the situation is just getting worse, it seems, almost every single day.
Oh, no, yeah. Every single day there's riots in the street where people are taking on the government, and, the government's killing people in the streets every single day in Venezuela. That's just life there now. It's really insane.
Mm-hmm.
Let's jump over to Asia, where we got this one Duterte story, and then Middle East, and we're out.
Yeah, this story is kind of depressing for me.
Yeah, for us, yes.
Yeah.
So, Rodrigo Duterte, the president of the Philippines, has said that he has no plans to visit the United States and has called America lousy.
Yeah. His full quote, which he said to Reuters, he said, "There will never be a time that I will go to America during my term, or even thereafter. I've seen America, and it's lousy." He said, "It would be good for the U.S. Congress to start with their own investigation of their own violations," in talking about his war on drugs that he's had, "of the so many civilians killed in the prosecution of wars in the Middle East." He says, "Otherwise, I'll be forced to investigate you also. I will start with your past sins." Yeah.
For me and you, this is just kind of really disappointing.
Yeah, because we thought that...
We were really looking forward to Duterte in America.
We thought that he actually was going to be visiting Duterte.
Well, the transcript that we read on the show, which we voice acted, he said he was.
Yeah. So, I don't know...
He's planning to come in the fall. Now, apparently, he's mad. I don't...
Now, I tend to think that, he was probably talking to Trump and telling him the truth. But, in public, he's saying this, "Oh, America's lousy, I'm not going to go there." But,
maybe.
I tend to, it did seem like Trump and Duterte
get along
very well. And so, yeah, Duterte might think America's lousy, but, when it comes to Trump, at least, you have a friend in the White House. Trump is very positive towards Duterte. Yeah. Duterte seems like he's very positive to Trump. So I don't see why Duterte wouldn't at least want to come to the U.S. If anything, Trump could go to the Philippines and visit him there.
That'd be cool as well.
That would be cool, too. I would like it to be the other way around, but I just want to get both of them together in the same room.
Most definitely.
If you could get Trump, Duterte, and Putin together, that would be my permanent desktop background.
The liberals would be so mad. So mad.
Anyways, so...
let's get into this Middle East stuff. So... The first story we have here is we put some new sanctions on Iran?
Apparently so. That's what it says.
But also in tandem... So do you know the details on this, Bobby?
I do. Let me bring up this article right here. So, the Trump administration has unveiled new sanctions on Iran. And this is over their ballistic missile program and the... quote-unquote destabilizing actions that they have in the region. Now, the U.S. Treasury Department has designated 16 entities and individuals for supporting, quote, illicit Iranian actors or transnational criminal activity. And because of that, they said this administration will continue to aggressively target Iran's malign activity, including their ongoing state support of terrorism, ballistic missile program, and human rights abuses. That was stated by Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. Mnuchin. And he said the sanctions will send a strong signal that the U.S. cannot and will not tolerate Iran's provocative and destabilizing behavior. We will continue to target the IRGC and pressure Iran to cease its ballistic missile program and malign activities in the region. Now, the administration is required to certify to Congress every 90 days that Tehran is sticking to the terms of the 2015 nuclear agreement, which we're going to get to here in a second.
We might as well get into it.
Yeah, so, there's nothing really else except for the fact that they are adding new sanctions. So let's get into the next thing.
So the next thing that we're going to get into is also Iran news. Trump has certified the Iran deal, the very controversial 2015 Barack Obama Iran deal. Do you have the specifics on that, Bobby?
I would if it's not a Washington Post article. It's not loading for me.
Washington Post. So, okay, yeah, I'll go into this. The Trump administration certified to Congress late Monday that Iran has continued to meet the required conditions of its nuclear deal with the United States and other world powers, but senior administration officials made clear that the certification was grudgingly and said that President Trump intends to impose new sanctions on Iran for ongoing malignant activities in non-nuclear areas such as ballistic missiles development and support for terrorism, which that's connected to these new sanctions we just did. But yeah, the big story here is Donald Trump has always been against the nuclear deal. You know, he called it, you know, one of the worst deals ever negotiated, but he's continuing the nuclear deal. He's not changing anything.
I guess not.
So, I don't know. I don't really have a very strong opinion on how this goes.
No, I don't. I figure that as long as Iran keeps to the deal and doesn't violate it,
I generally don't care then.
Which, yeah, I generally don't care either. And I think that's, you know, that's kind of what Trump's been hinting at, especially recently when he's referred to it, especially after he's gone into office. I mean, I think they said that Iran has been actually following it. They haven't broken the terms yet. So as long as they're following it, I guess Trump really has no need to do anything rash. But it's worth something that, you know, you need to keep an eye on it, obviously. But yeah, don't do anything to, like, you know, completely destabilize any or whatever is left of the relationships between the two countries.
Yeah. Let's get into the last story of the week, which is one of the best stories of the week, actually.
Definitely the best story of the week.
This is super good news. So, Trump reportedly has ended the CIA support for anti-Assad rebels in Syria. Do you have some specifics on that, Bobby?
Yes, I do. So, the U.S., if you don't know, since 2013, has been both arming and training the rebel fighters in Syria. Now, these were the guys who were fighting against Assad.
Yeah.
And so we have been training them, we have been arming them for the last 4 years. And this is something that, you know, a lot of people didn't realize we were doing, but, like, we continue to do it. And the CIA has been doing it for years. A lot of that was training them actually in Bahrain and then shipping them back to Syria. So even though, you know, we've been fighting against, like, ISIS and stuff in Syria, you know, we're training and arming the rebels that are fighting Assad.
These rebels are essentially Al-Qaeda.
Yeah, pretty much. What's left
pretty
of them.
much who these people are.
Yeah. And so, you know, Russia's fighting on the side of Assad, is bombing these people. We're arming and training them, and we're bombing them. So it's like we're, you know, again, we're essentially on the other side of Russia. But at the same time, it seems like Trump has been more pro-Assad in, at least compared to President Obama was.
At least he doesn't want to take him out of office.
Yeah.
Which is like the best thing possible for all people.
So, you know, a lot of people like to use the words where they say stuff like, you know, why are we arming and training people that we're fighting against? Trump at least has now completely ended that program. We are no longer training Syrian rebels. We are no longer arming Syrian rebels. And if you remember, you know, we talked about how Trump and Putin got that ceasefire deal.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of this has to go along with that. That they know that the war is drawing to a close. So we're going to stop, you know.
The conflict's almost over.
Yeah. So we're going to stop our movements to support the side that I guess we've been quote unquote supporting here. But they said that, and, you know, if you remember back in April, you know, Trump, when he ran on, you know, we don't want to get any more wars. We don't want to be, you know, we don't want to do any nation building. And if you remember back in April, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said that Assad had no role in governing Syria, but Nikki Haley, ambassador to the UN, said that there's no solution to the problem in Syria that involves Assad remaining in power. But at least by stopping the training and arming of these Syrian rebels, you're pretty much allowing, especially if you allow the ceasefire to continue, Assad's side is winning.
Yes.
And by his side winning, if we don't take an active role in trying to remove him from power, which, as you said before just a few seconds ago, it seems to be that's more of Trump's position. Assad's going to be able to remain in power. Obviously, his country is completely destabilized, and he's going to have to try to put it back together. But his side is winning, and it's going to win. And by us stopping the training and funding and arming of these rebels, his side's going to win a lot easier.
Yeah, much sooner. So I'm very happy with that. This Syria stuff, very irritating. Really don't want us to be in Syria at all. And we shouldn't be funding these rebels out there. They're not people that we can trust. We shouldn't be arming them. So, I guess McCain will be kind of sad that that's over. But,
well, that is what he tweeted right after he got brain cancer, so.
Yeah. But, with that said, we got through the show. Just a bit over 2.5 hours.
Just about 2.5 hours.
So pretty good length on the show this week. Again, we are doing the midweek mini podcast this week on the Russian conspiracy. So look forward to that. We're going to have Cameron on for that.
Yes.
He requested to do the entire thing as Jesse Ventura.
That's going to be really fun if he does.
I think he'd definitely be able to do it.
Yes. He does a very good impression of him.
It's very good. Once again, we have a PayPal, which is in the description, paypal.me/Trump Republic Radio. If you'd like to help the show out and donate, that'd be greatly appreciative if you appreciate the work that we do. That goes towards paying for the hosting fees for the podcast. That's going to go towards getting some new microphones. We just purchased a new one for the guests, which is pretty good.
We're going to try it out on this week's midweek podcast with Cameron.
I believe it's a much improved microphone.
Yes, so we'll test it out and see how it works. So look forward to seeing how well that does.
Yeah, and if that works well for us, we'll buy another one of those. The audio should be very crystal clear.
Mm-hmm.
We are also looking to put that money towards the T-shirts, Trump Republic Radio T-shirts, which we are going to be making sometime in the future.
I'd say probably within the next few weeks we'll have them designed. So maybe by the end of August we'll probably start selling them. Possibly,
maybe something like that. I don't know.
But we'll keep everyone updated. So if you are a big supporter of the show and you want to buy a Trump Republic Radio T-shirt, stay with us, and we'll have those available at some point.
Yeah, we'll give you the information
next
when
month
we
or
do,
so.
when we are starting to sell them.
Yeah.
We'll be shipping them out ourselves. So, any other thing that comes to mind, or are we good?
The last thing I want to say is, like we said at the beginning, if you want to get in contact with us, if you want to leave us any comments, questions, concerns, or just get in contact with us
any
at all,
questions that you want us to answer on the show,
you can email us at trumprepublicradio@gmail.com. It will be in the description below. Also, if you've gotten this far, it probably won't matter, but we're going to start having timestamps in the description of the episode, so if you want to go back to a section or listen to something important, you can go there. We're going to see how that works and hopefully do that for all future episodes.
Yes, and once again, thank you for listening to another edition of Trump Republic Radio. Have a good one.
Goodbye.